Alright, I think we are good here. I think we are good and live. I already see at least one comment in the chat box. Hello, Thomas. Nice to see you in there. I don't know if you're still here. I am starting a couple minutes after the hour. Apologies for the slight delay here, but I think we're good to go for the day. So to pick up where we left off from yesterday, we had completed another 100 intermediate puzzles yesterday for the Woodpecker method that we're working our way through here. Hey, Thomas. There you are. And we're going to continue with another 100 puzzles today. Or, well, we're going to do more than 100 puzzles today because I do have more time this afternoon to stick around and hang out. So we're going to continue through the intermediate chapter. It looks like we have about, let's see, there's about 66 puzzles left in this 5.3 chapter. Then there's 50 puzzles in 6.1. And then, yeah, there's still like 205 there, 254 there. So we're definitely not going to finish intermediate today, but we're going to try to get through a bigger portion than the typical 100 puzzles we've done the past 2 days. Because I do have a bit longer I can stream today and hang out. So let me actually just look at my schedule real quick. Yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's get going here. Hey there, Mukund. Nice to see you again as well. We will get started right away. So let me hit the learn button. Close that. Okay, our move is white in this one. Alexander Alekine. Looks like we should have some kind of knight c7 idea at the right time. However, right now it would just be captured. So it feels like we should be able to capture on e6. And then if they take back, we take another time. They take with the queen, we make the fork on c7. Part of the question, though, is that they don't necessarily have to capture the rook a second time. They could play something like king to d8, which is relatively annoying. So let's see here. Let's see. There's knight to b6. Maybe this is the idea. We take advantage of this pin. Knight to b6. Probably black goes to counterattack the rook. But then once we take the rook, if they take our rook, we have knight c7 check forking. So I think it's actually knight to b6 in this situation. Oh, that's silly of me though. He can trade queens. Okay, that was bad. Yeah, not knight to b6. I'm sorry. He can trade queens once the knight moves. First puzzle of the day, a little slow to start. Okay, let's think more of it though. Maybe if he doesn't take on e6, we're just playing a move like rook to e7, and it probably just looks pretty dangerous. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, knight b6, queen takes d1. Yeah. I'm just waking up, so. Okay, so if it's not knight to b6, then it's probably got to be rook takes e6 is my assumption. The thing is, though, I don't know how convincing this is. Knight c7 check, king moves, take the queen, king takes. Black does have 2 rooks for the queen. I guess we are ahead 1 pawn and the rooks aren't activated just yet, so we can probably start giving checks and picking up pawns, and probably white's in good shape there. I don't know if it matters which rook we use. I guess another option is queen f3, aiming to play knight to b6 anyways, but I would venture to guess that black plays like rook d8 or something. I'm going to go with rook takes e6. Okay, I think it wants the other rook. Then we take this way. And then I guess it's rook e7 check is my assumption. And then, yeah, it says black's 2 rooks are still on their initial squares, and white's queen has time to collect a second pawn. If the king takes the knight, I guess we have queen e2 check, and then queen takes b5 or something like that. Yeah, it says knight to b6, Queen takes, rook moves, trade the rooks, take a pawn. It says here white's knight is in trouble. I guess. I mean, yeah, it's a little hard to get the knight out, I guess, in this situation. It pretty much says either rook is good, a rook or e rook. It says not to play queen f3 because black apparently is fighting back in a position like this. Okay, so my first instinct was to take the bishop on e6, but I wasn't 100% sure about the evaluation, but I think once you get to the end here, it is pretty clear-cut. White's going to pick up an extra pawn and be in good shape. Alright, looks like it should be bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, rook check, and then we win the queen. I think this is the way to go. Oh, okay. I guess we can just take the rook here in this situation, or we can even move our rook in. I would venture to guess that taking the rook is simple enough. Yeah, so that's the way to go. Alright. This looks like rook takes, queen d1 check, and then checkmate on c1. And if white doesn't take the rook, I mean, if queen takes, we take the queen there. And then if the king moves, we take on a2. So I think we do this. Take the queen. Why not the a rook? Yeah, I think in that original first position, it ended up not mattering. It said both moves and worked out fine, I guess. All right, we have queen h3 check. The rook will block. The f1 rook is protected. We could start with rook e3, I guess. Knight takes, rook takes, queen moves, and then queen h3. But maybe the queen goes back and keeps this rook protected. It's a little less convincing, I would say. Maybe it is rook e3. I was also thinking they had knight takes, rook takes, and then d7, but I think we have queen a8 check and then taking the queen. If we take on d7, we walk into a pin and they can take the rook on e3. Maybe it is rook e3. Knight takes, rook takes, queen I think goes to b1 to keep this rook defended. And then we probably have queen c6 check, queen h3, rook h2, queen takes g3. It looks pretty good, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. Queen h3, rook h2 seems to be annoying. Okay, I think it's rook e3. And then even if we don't even if we don't get checkmate, I think worst case scenario we can check and take the d pawn, and then we pick up the g pawn. I think that this is apparently not the right move. Okay, fair enough. What am I missing here then? It's not rook e3. Queen h3, rook h2, and I don't see a super convincing move there. Maybe just rook e1 at the start? But then I would imagine white can just move the king up or something like that, and I don't really see the follow-up there. We could start with something like queen to c6, setting up discovered checks, but again, I think the king just moves over to h2, and Feels like white's doing okay. Queen h3 is so close to checkmate if there was no rook that could go to h2, or if the rook on f1 was unprotected. I tried rook e3 Itachi. Yeah, I tried that one. That wasn't working in the position, I suppose. I thought about that one. Queen h3, rook h2. Don't really see a great follow-up. Rook e1, king h2. Again, don't really see a great follow-up. There's not a whole lot of other moves that are worth calculating. Maybe it is just something like queen to c6 and I'm not so sure. Rook h4 and then rook e3. That could maybe be an idea. Rook h4, pawn takes, rook e3, knight takes rook, queen h3, check. But then I think white still has rook h2, as far as I'm aware there. I thought about the same thing, Itachi, but yeah, rook e3 is not the answer. I put it on the board already, and it said no. It said no dice on that one. Maybe bishop e3, but bishop e3 there's d7, which is a big issue. Moving the bishop, I think d7 is a big problem. What is this one? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, is it just rook e1, but then king h2, and again, I feel like we run out of juice on that. I'm really not so sure on this one here, to be honest. I think in a game, I would go rook e3, knight takes, rook takes, you know, queen b1 or whatever white does. I thought queen b1 to keep the rook protected, and then maybe I would check and take the pawn. And I think black's in good shape. Black is up a pawn in the starting position. So I don't even really need to do anything super drastic to have a good position. Maybe it is just some kind of quiet move or slow move like queen c6 or something. I'm really not sure on this one. All of the other puzzles so far I've been able to at least figure out after a few tries, but I'm really struggling on this one for some reason. Rook h4 and queen h3, they take my queen. Rook h4 and knight, rook e3, they take, check, rook h2, and I have no more checks. Rook e1, I think the king just moves. I mean, I haven't tried rook e1, is it? Yeah, I'm really not sure on this one. Really not sure. Okay. I have not done this with any of the other puzzles yet, but I'm gonna click a hint. I don't want to be stuck on one puzzle for, you know, a super long amount of time. I want to try to get through as many as I can. It's a rook move. Okay, it's at least we know it's a rook move, which, I mean, I already tried rook e1 and rook e3. Is it like rook e2 or something? Rook e2, they take, I check, but then after rook h2, this is still protected, right? The rook on f1 is protected by the queen, so rook takes h4, pawn takes h4. I didn't see a follow-up in that position. Queen c6 check, there's queen f3. Rook e2 there would be queen takes e2. If it's rook e2 to start with, rook takes Man, even with the hint, I I didn't really see anything special for the rook to do other than rook e3 or maybe rook e1, but not queen h3 hang. I think I think after queen h3 the rook just blocks on h2 and we don't really have a follow-up. I did click the hint button already, so I know it's a rook move. That's why the rook's highlighted. So I know it's a rook move. I already tried rook e1 and rook e3. Rook e2 is really, I mean, again, I don't think it's rook takes h4 because then there's no follow-up at that point as far as I can tell. Yeah, rook e2, rook takes e2. I thought white was fine there. Queen h3, he still blocks on h2, and the rook on f1 is still protected. Maybe it is rook h4, but I just... I mean, Thomas, you were the one that recommended like rook h4, excuse me, rook h4 and then rook e3 earlier. I didn't think that it worked, but I mean, what else? Oh, maybe it is just... Oh, hold on. That's a good point. Yeah, I think you got it there, Thomas. Yeah, I think we can just slow play it. Rook e2, take, and then we can just take back. We don't need to check right away. Because if the queen takes on e2, then queen h3 and take the rook. That's... I think you got it. Yeah, now that you're saying that, yeah, this is definitely the way. And then we take the rook. And then we take the queen. Yeah, rook e2, and then rook takes e2. It's kind of two quiet moves back to back, which is not always that easy to see. It makes sense once you kind of put it on the board and once you actually think about the move order. But yeah, like none of the moves are a check, none of the moves are a capture, and even the move rook e2 itself, it is a threat. You're threatening queen h3 checkmate and blocking off the rook's access on the second rank, but yeah, that was a trickier one than I expected. Yeah, good on finding that one, Thomas. I think you got that one there. Okay, let's keep rolling along. Could be d5 and then some kind of bishop takes b6, queen a4. I mean, we have a pretty big lead in development. We're castled, black isn't. Feels like blasting open the center and trying to get a check on a4 is the way to go. Could also take the pawn on c4 and then queen a4 check and then take back, but then I guess you're winning a pawn. But it feels like you should be able to get more than that here. It really does. Really feels like you should have more than just picking up the c4 pawn, even though that very well could be the idea. So d5, if pawn takes d5, bishop takes knight, queen a4 check, king moves, queen to d7. That looks very, very dangerous for black, I will say. If knight takes, we still check on a4. Probably check on c5 and knight d7 check. Again, that looks very, very dangerous. And if bishop takes, I think we still take on b6, and I think white's in big trouble there. So knight takes c4 does win a pawn, but I don't think it's the best move. I think it's d5 on this one. Okay, yeah, it does say d5 is the way to go. It does say that Alekhine won a pawn with knight takes c4, queen a4, and queen takes c4, but the bishop pair and long diagonal gave some compensation. Okay, so yeah, d5 was the way to go. Got that one? Good. I think this one's bishop takes h6, queen e3 check, queen g5, queen h6, and then knight g5, some kind of, you know, zigzag everything forward and blast through with the attack. I don't think there's a ton of calculation. Okay, if he doesn't take, I guess we can just take the rook, right? I mean, I think this is good enough. Not the best move. I guess we are down a piece, so taking back this is maybe not the most convincing. Maybe then it's like queen to d2 or queen to e3 going for the g5 square. I have to imagine this is a position where there's probably a number of good moves. Queen here, knight g4 is kind of annoying because the bishop covers the g5 square. So maybe it's just like knight e5 and then you eventually slide the queen over. I mean, there's got to be lots of moves that are good here. Knight e5, yeah, it says knight e5. Black can't defend against the attack, even if it takes a few moves before it's over. Okay. Alright, black to play here on this one. Feels like a take the knight, knight takes e4, and then you're hitting the rook and the f2 pawn, and I think we pick up material from there. Okay, that's the way to go. Check, take, move, check. King gets to go to the d6 square, and it looks dangerous, but I don't see a mate at that point. There is this weird knight h6 move, pawn takes, rook check, and eventually get the queen to g8. That looks like it could be pretty dangerous. Maybe that is the way to go here. Now the question is, do you check or play knight h6 first? If you go knight h6 first and the queen moves away, then you can still check anyways, I guess. So I don't know if it matters. Can we do this first? Okay. I gotta assume it's the check and then knight h6 then. I could be completely off on this whole idea though, but it looks dangerous because I don't really want to check right away, and then the king kind of wiggles back to safety. So knight h6, pawn takes, queen g8. It looks very weird, but I don't really know what you do to stop queen e8 checkmate. It's not really a great way to stop that. Even if you move the rook, I still mate. You can't move the f-pawn because the queen's in the way. You can't move the queen and the f-pawn at the same time. So I still think it's this move. Okay. And this is it. Okay. Let's see. Yates started with a knight h6, but this allowed the move queen to c8. And I guess if we do check on the back rank, black gives the queen up. Okay, so we need to check first, then knight h6. I had the right idea, just the wrong move order on this one. Alright, let's keep going. If this knight was gone, we would have rook to d6, forking the queen and the bishop, so is it knight takes pawn, and then rook to d6, or is it knight takes e5? Well, it can't be knight takes e5 because the knight guards the bishop. So I think it's knight takes c5, rook to d6, and then you take the bishop, I think. Yeah, and then well, pretty much the queen is actually trapped, right? Okay, yeah, it has nothing to do with the bishop. The queen is actually just trapped in this position. I guess that's even better. Alright, bishop takes, queen takes, and then maybe b4 to kick the queen away from protecting the knight. I got to assume taking the knight is better than making the fork, so we'll do that. Alright, black's move, equal material. I guess we're actually down a pawn, right? 4 or 5. Yeah, we're down a pawn. Both of these guys, actually all three of these pieces are undefended. Not terribly easy to attack the queen, but we can play queen c3 to hit the rook, queen d4 hits the bishop, but neither one of those moves attack both, which is kind of the ideal circumstance. a3 is hanging. I can grab the pawn if I want to. It's potentially an idea. Oh, there is a way to attack both. Queen e4, and then if rook takes, rook c1. As soon as I say that there, Thomas, yeah, I was like, oh, how do we attack both? Well, there is a way to attack both, and it takes advantage of the back rank. Yeah, very nice. I think that is the idea. As soon as you put it there, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Very nice. Yeah, you guys got it. Very nice job. What to do here? Knight check. I think the queen takes the knight, and then my queen runs into trouble. So I don't think it's that. I guess I just take the pawn and then check and take the queen, right? That wins at least a pawn, I guess. Oh, it says alternative. I can do something better. Oh, I can take the bishop, then check, then trade, then take the rook. I can clear the whole board here. Check, check. Oh, sorry. I said knight c5 check when I was calculating, and then I just rushed to take the queen. That was really sloppy. Yeah, I said rook takes, and then knight c5 check, and then for whatever reason I took the I took on c7 a second time right away for some reason. Winning pawn in game. Yeah. All right. This queen's in really bad shape. We're not even down any material. g3, I guess there's queen h3. This knight is definitely annoying. There could be some ideas of giving up the exchange and then playing from there. Let's see. Knight takes d4. You guys are on the on top of things today. Yeah, no, I think it might be a knight takes d4. We have to check rook takes f8, but I think bishop takes, and then eventually take d4 with check, and then pick up the knight. Knight takes d4. What if they take? Well, I guess even if they play rook to d1, we can just take the knight on c5. I think you're right. There's a lot of different moves worth considering here. There's like g3, knight g3, rook takes knight. I was even looking at knight e3 for a moment. But yeah, knight takes d4 looks to be pretty good. Check. Alright, very nice. We're all working together on these, no worries. Fine by me. This one looks like rook c8 and queen takes e3. We have rook takes d8 check and then taking the queen back. And I guess the queen can go to d6 to guard the rook instead? Maybe that's possible. But then maybe we have some kind of e5, pawn takes, trade stuff and take e5. I mean, it looks like a very good position for white, I will say. Rook to d5 is also possible with the same idea, but the queen has a few extra squares to keep the rook protected. Like queen to c7 looks solid. I think it's rook c8, queen d6. And then I think from a strategic standpoint, e5, pawn takes, trade the rooks, take e5. Black has all these pawn weaknesses. We have bishop g4 coming. Black can't really attack anything of ours, and the king is pretty weak at the same time. There might be something better than that, though. I would not be surprised if there's like an objectively better move available, but that looks pretty good. I do feel like it has to be something with this lineup, and you have to attack this rook, I think. So it's really only one of these two moves as far as I can tell. Unless maybe you start with pawn to e5. You could begin with this, I suppose, but then maybe black has f5 in that circumstance. So I think it's rook c8. Okay, it says alternative. Yeah, h5 also looks like a pretty good move, quite honestly. Doesn't fit the theme of a tactic, but maybe it is rook to d5, queen moves. Oh, hold on. So rook to d5, queen moves. There is queen. No. There is queen to c5, I guess, right? Hold on. So rook d5, queen c7, queen c... No, but then he takes the queen. And then we can't... We have to take back. But then that still looks pretty good. I think we win the a-pawn. Okay, so it's got to be this. It's not that. Wow. So rook c8 was the alternative, but something's... Okay. Okay, so it's not rook c8, even though rook c8 works. It's not rook d5, which I also thought worked after queen c7, queen c5. I thought we eventually won the a-pawn. That was my impression. Okay, what else is it then? It could very well be like h5, and if they play g5, you take the pawn with check. But I mean, Black doesn't have to do that. They can just, like, you know, move the queen away or something. So I don't think it's h5. Even though I think h5 is a good move, I don't think that is winning us any material right away. So maybe it is e5 to start with. I'm not 100% sure. e5, f5, then rook c8. That move order works better because then we take away the d6 square. I think it is e5 to begin with, and then rook to c8. And then there we are. Okay, I am curious here. It says rook c8, queen d6, e5 also wins, but requires some variations. Okay, but at least it does win, as it said. f5 is definitely a bad move. Black should take on e5, but then we pretty much get around to... okay. So part of e5 is that we're also opening up the c6 square access. So rook to c8 and then back to c6, forking the queen and the bishop. I guess this is an important resource. Okay, so it's e5 and then rook c8, not the other way around. So kind of a move order, a little bit of a move order thing on that one. Okay, I think we take d6 and then take f5, and there's a pin along the 6th rank, and then it looks pretty dangerous for Black there. We could also take e6 right away, which also looks good, I will say. I mean, what's wrong with taking e6? If the knight moves, then we have bishop takes f5. I can't really imagine why that would be any bad. I guess if you take here, maybe there's knight e4 right away. Maybe that's Black's idea. So I think you want to take the knight first, and then the pawn. Yeah, there's a lot of pins going on here. The e-pawn is pinned 2 different directions, and queen h7 check, and bishop takes e6, and stuff like that's very dangerous. Alright, let's see here. I'm thinking rook takes bishop, and then some kind of knight g4 move. Hitting the queen. The pawn cannot take the knight because of queen takes g2 checkmate. And then, aside from hitting the queen, we're also threatening queen h5 and then queen h2 checkmate. And as far as I can tell, I don't think white has a way to stop both threats. Anywhere the queen moves, we'll check and then play queen h2. They can't protect the h2 square with their queen. They can't protect the h5 square with their queen. So I think that's the way we do it. We eliminate that, hop this in. And then, okay, we don't have queen h5. I think we just have to take the queen, and then we can take on d5 with our bishop or knight or whatever, or we can take on f1, and we're going to be up at least a pawn. Maybe we'll have 2 pieces for a rook. Both of those are pretty good situations. All right, this is a nice one. Yeah, you have to take the bishop first and then knight g4. And then there's no way to stop the 2 threats. All right, I mean, this feels like a pretty straightforward queen h4, or we take on f3, then queen h4. Or we take on f3 2 times, and then the rook is hit and queen f2. All of those look pretty good, quite honestly. I guess that version of things is a little less decisive in my mind. I think it's bishop takes f3 first. And then now the question was, do we give the check and then, or take the pawn? I think we take the pawn, and then the rook is kind of lost. If it goes to g1, we have queen f2. If we check here, king e2, queen, I don't know, queen f2, king d1, queen takes f3, that still looks very good. King to d3 instead. Queen takes f3 there, still looks very good too. I think it's queen takes f3, but it would not surprise me if queen h4 was also working. And yeah, here we just win the rook. It says queen h4 is a blunder. Surprising. Apparently white's doing alright. I guess we are down a piece without an immediate attack. So it is important to take on f3, then take f3 a second time. Okay. What to do here? Looks like we can play knight takes f5 and then bishop takes d5, and then we continue having two pieces for the rook, which looks pretty good. Knight f3 check, and then taking the rook is also entirely possible. Knight f3 check, king moves, take the rook, rook takes back, then knight takes f5. And then there's still kind of this pin going on here. I would assume we check first, right? I don't see why. I guess we do not check first. I don't really know why we don't check first and take the rook, but yeah, knight takes f5 was my first instinct, but I also wasn't really sure why we don't just check and take the rook to begin with. I mean, if it's not knight f3 check, then it must be knight takes f5. And then bishop takes d5. It's a very good position, but apparently knight f3 check, take, and I guess the bishop is trapped. I guess that's the claim here. We do have bishop h3, so it doesn't seem that straightforward, but maybe bishop h3, queen takes f5 or something like that. Okay, so my first instinct was the right one, but, you know, okay, knight f3 was not the way to go on this one. This is, I think this is a smothered mate idea. Check here. Check on e7, king goes back. Check on g8. No, hold on, does that work? Oh, sorry, it's knight here, knight e5, king back, knight f7, king here, knight check, king back. And it is a smothered mate, but it's a different knight route. So knight e5, he can block, but then we have the g6 square. If he does it this way, we eventually get a nice smothered mate. All right, next one. F5, pawn takes. I guess there's bishop h5, which is kind of annoying. Oh, maybe it's f5, pawn takes, take the bishop, and then take on e7. I think that's what it would be then. If they take our knight first, we take back with the pawn, and then both the knight and the bishop are both attacked at the same time. So I think it's f5, but then we take the bishop to clear out the file, and then we win the bishop on e7. This looks like it should be knight takes f7, bishop g6, but maybe king g8 and it's not clear cut. So maybe it's bishop g6 first. Pawn takes, queen takes. This should definitely be mate somewhere around the corner. Bishop b4 check, c5. For me, the problem is that this is just tactics. I suppose a lot of people need this. Hope you guys have fun. Yeah, this is the tactical, you know, this particular Woodpecker method book. This is number 1. This is all based on tactics and calculation. I do also plan on going through Woodpecker method number 2, which came out maybe a month or two ago. That's a book that has 1,000 positional puzzles. I'm going through Woodpecker method 1 first, and then I'm going to do Woodpecker method 2 afterwards. That's the plan, at least, as far as we can make it happen. But yeah, tactics and calculation are important for all levels of players, no matter what level or rating range you're at. I'm a FIDE master, and I'm still solving these puzzles and stuff like that myself. And I'm, with the goal that improving at calculation will help me to play better in my games. I'm pretty sure it's bishop g6, queen takes, and then yeah. So the question here was, do I throw in this check? This would almost be mate, but he has pawn to c5. I can check on f7, but then the king kind of wiggles away. Worst case scenario, I can move here and take the rook. That might be the way to go here. Okay, says alternative. Have I looked at the positional one? Is it any good? I will want it to be more about evaluation, etc. I've looked at some puzzles in it. I haven't worked my whole way through it because I kind of planned on saving it to do on stream. But I have looked at maybe, I don't know, 20 or so puzzles from different sections of it, just kind of checking how they look. I think they're pretty good. They're also, at least the ones I had looked at are, I was looking at some of the ones mostly in like the easier chapters. They're pretty standard positional patterns. Like, you have an isolated d-pawn, the best move is to advance it forward and trade it off. You're playing against a doubled pawn, you're supposed to blockade the pawn. Knight takes c6 is a good idea here. But maybe bishop takes, check, knight gives itself up, and then black somehow runs away. Maybe. I'll think about that move here. So it looks to be pretty decent so far, but there really aren't that many reviews on the positional book just yet. So it is, I'm going to try to, give my own impression on it once I get to work through more of it is the goal. Okay. What do we do here? Bishop knight takes c6, Itachi's recommending. So it's more actual positional concepts and working your way, or woodpecking your way. Yeah, and that's essentially the idea of the whole woodpecker method. It's a very large amount of puzzles. This particular book has 1,128. This is the first woodpecker method. The positional one has 1,000 puzzles exactly, and yeah, the goal is that you go through all of them, and then the method itself recommends that you go through all of them. Then you go through all of them in half the time it took you the first cycle, and then you cut it in half once again. And the goal is you're just looking at a ton of puzzles with the aim to improve your pattern recognition is what it comes down to. So once I finish this first cycle on this book, then I'm going to test myself in terms of I'm going to go play blitz games on stream probably. I'll go solve, let's say I'll do Puzzle Rush. I'll go compare kind of my previous scores and ratings before doing the woodpecker method, and then after I do the woodpecker method, I'll see how much I've improved or what the difference is. I'll do that after each cycle is the goal. I need to finish the book first before I do that though. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on this one. We check. I think if we take the pawn, they block with the knight and then run the king. It looks pretty good, but I don't see the mate. Can't take the knight. Knight takes, I would guess knight takes back, and then I don't see the follow-up. Even king takes. Maybe the king takes and tries to run away. Knight takes, king takes, and then some kind of zigzag away there. But it could work because we still play knight f7 at some point. In a game, I would probably just play knight f7 and take the rook, and we're just up the exchange. I don't really see the problem with that, but it did say that's not the answer. Bishop check, pawn blocks. Pawn takes, knight takes. Maybe you can start to pile up on the knight that's pinned or something. Or maybe then you have queen f7 check and rook d1. I don't know. I'm going to go with bishop b4 check. And then I guess I take the pawn. And then, what do I do here? Check, king d6, check, they block. I can go rook c1 to attack the pinned piece, and it's not terribly easy to protect it, I guess. I don't know, is this the idea? It feels like it's a puzzle where there's just a ton of answers and good moves that work, so not a huge fan of this. I guess I can check and take the bishop, right? Maybe that's the idea. Check and take the bishop. Okay. It even says here in the answers, the simplest to calculate the simplest to calculate might be knight f7 and knight takes h8. That is for sure winning, so okay. Black loses this, black loses the way they did in the game as well for sure, but yeah, I mean, in my mind, knight f7 and knight takes h8 looks easy enough, in my opinion. Let's see here. Sorry for interrupting. Could I ask what you think you would need what you think you need in order to actually get up to GM? Like, honestly, well, I got to get to IM first, but in order to get to IM, I would imagine that, and not even imagine, I mean, I kind of know what I need to get better at. It takes hard work. So I think for myself personally, I need to improve my calculation, which is a pretty standard answer for all rating ranges. You can always afford to get better at calculation, which is partly why I'm doing this book here. I need to get better at converting winning positions. I've had very good positions in lots of my games, and either I've messed them up and not won them, or I've gotten myself into time trouble and made life more difficult for myself. I know for myself, time trouble or time management is a sore spot in my own games. And I also need to get better at playing positions where I'm worse and kind of defending and not falling apart. I would say those are, at least for myself, those feel like my three biggest things. I think my openings are very good. I've been told by other by coaches and stuff like that my openings are like already international master level. I could probably afford to get better at end games, but I don't think that's my weakest spot. A lot of the feedback I've gotten is that like my time management can definitely afford to be better, converting advantages, and then calculation. Now, for myself, those feel like the three main things I would say. My positional play, I've been told, is already international master level, and I would agree with that. I think positionally speaking, I'm quite good. I think if I go through the Woodpecker Method 2 book, I feel like I would do even better in that book than I would in this one. That's maybe a way of wording that, because I think my positional play is better than my calculation skills. But yeah, I would say for myself, those are the three main things I would need to work on, and I am trying to work on them. That's part of why I'm doing this. I'm at least starting off with this Woodpecker Method 1 book, because that's the calculation side of things. Okay, what to do here? G6 sets up a mate threat, but they just take the pawn. But then we can check. Oh, hey, Angel Perez. Sorry, didn't see your message earlier. Nice to see you here today. So hold on, G6 take, but I check. Pawn blocks, I guess. If he blocks on F7, then we mate. So pawn blocks. Then rook check, king here, knight e5 check. And then I think I'm winning at least the exchange. You could also start with queen here, oddly enough. Queen here, queen takes, then g6, and how does black stop the mate? That's the fancier way of doing it. But maybe if queen here, they have knight takes pawn. And then I don't think well, actually, no, knight takes pawn, then I can check and then take the knight. So I think you can kind of do both of these, honestly. Hey, Ernesto. Good to see you. Queen c4 looks pretty fancy. But I think g6 also works. I think even with bishop d5, I think I take the bishop and play g6, and I don't see how black stops the rook h8 mate. My whole goal with queen c4 is I'm just trying to get the queen away from guarding the g6 square. So honestly, these both might work, but it would be good to make sure if one is better than the other. So I'm going to look at g6 first. Queen takes g6, I assume has to be played. Then queen c4 check. If you block on f7, I have mate. Pawn to d5 is really the only move that black can do. Then I play knight to e5, or I can check and then play knight to e5. I don't think I play knight e5 first because of queen takes rook. So I think I would check, king moves, check, king moves, I don't know, e6 or something. And then I think I take on g6. They get my queen, I take their rook, and then I'm up the exchange. That feels pretty good. So the other move was queen c4. Black can try d5. But then I still play g6, and I think we're pretty much back to the same position. Black takes my queen, or sorry, black takes my pawn. I check, I play knight e5, check, and then we're back to the exact same position. So the question is, does it really matter which one we do? I feel like g6 has, you could say g6 has less risk, because I don't have to, you know, consider somehow messing up some kind of calculation that loses my queen, but I think both work. So it's not g6, which is a bit surprising. If rook check and then g6, I think the queen just takes, and then the king goes to e7. So I don't think it's that. Is it queen c4 first? It's not queen c4 either. Wow. Okay. So my instinct is completely off here since it's neither one of these moves. Check. Here. Maybe it's queen takes g7. Hold on. Maybe queen takes g7. Knight e5 right away, maybe. Maybe that's an idea, too. But then maybe, yeah, wait, if queen takes, then I have g6. Yeah, maybe knight e5 right away is also an idea. I don't think it works to check and take on g7. I think the king has too many escape squares. Check here, take, we check, the king moves up the board. We check, the king goes back. I don't think we have a win. So yeah, maybe a knight e5 right away. Pawn takes, then g6. Queen takes, check, there's no d5 anymore, and then we mate on f7. If queen takes, then we have g6, or trade queens and then g6. Is there anything else black can do? They can play g6 to begin with, but then we can check and then checkmate. Yeah, maybe knight e5 right away. And then g6, right? Yeah, because queen c4, king f7. Thomas pointed that out. That is a good point. I didn't think about that one. But I think we go g6 now, and then check, and then mate. Okay. We all work together on that one. Okay, I'm really curious though. I thought, hold on. I do want to go back to the start. I'm not sure what's wrong with queen c4. I understand king f7 is a move. So I can get that. It says rook h7 is also winning, but okay, I didn't think about rook h7 at all, quite honestly. Queen c4, I think it's king f7. Oh, you can take the queen, and then queen f1. Oh, okay. Fair enough, I completely missed that idea. And then black has time to get rid of the pawn since there's no more back rank check. That's a pretty cool defensive idea. You just give the queen up because you had just won the queen, but your goal is to, like, disconnect the rooks. Okay, I think king f7 would also work, as Thomas said. But, okay, so queen c4 is not the move, that's for sure. I'm curious what was wrong with g6. So queen takes g6, check here. I knew knight e5 didn't work here because queen takes h5. But I thought maybe we could check and then check, and then take. And then I thought we were up the exchange in this position, which is technically true. But our pieces are all jumbled up, and black has a lot of pawns. Maybe that's the issue. Black is up a pawn, the knight is kind of stuck on f8. Okay, white is a little bit better, but definitely not as much as 95 in the starting position. There's no question about that. Okay. Yeah, 95 is a really, really nice one here. We're looking at all the right ideas, but again, 95 is like a very, very nice candidate move type of situation. So, all right, good work, everybody. I think Ernesto's the one that pointed that out. Very nice. Okay, what are we doing here? Bishop takes. If knight takes queen, I take that and then take there. But then I'm not even ahead at that point, actually, so hold on. I'm not even ahead material. I think I can take the knight, though, and then play queen g2 and pick up the rook in the corner. And then we're up a bunch of pawns. Is that the idea on this one? I think that's correct. Yeah, the rook is just trapped. We take the rook, we take the h-pawn, and then we're up a bunch of pawns. Okay, white's a piece up, but must solve the threats. If we take here, we get mated, which is bad news. You can check on c8, and then if the bishop takes, then you take on e5, and you're threatening mate as well as the queen trade. That looks pretty good. And if black moves the king instead, then maybe we have bishop c4 check or something like that, or rook c7 check. I think we have to start with rook c8. I think that's pretty clear cut. I mean, there are just too many threats in the position. We either need to make a bigger threat, which is kind of hard to do, or we need to check. So we kind of have to check here to one-up black in this position. So I'm pretty positive it's rook c8 check to start with. I assume the king moves. Maybe another check with the bishop. There's also queen h5 check, which looks like an idea worth considering. If king f6, rook f8 check, and then the king moves, and queen e8 check, and that for sure is winning. And if pawn to g6, we take on h7 with check. So okay, I think it's rook check and then queen h5. No, 95 was your analysis. I think you delve into long calculations too quickly when you probably would just see it immediately if you're still considering. That's fair enough. Yeah, I go down the rabbit hole a little bit rather than looking for kind of the big picture approach. Okay, I think it's this queen h5 check. I think bishop c4, king e... hold on. Bishop c4 I think also works too, now that I'm looking at it. Maybe king to g6? Yeah, if I widen my kind of candidate move options, I think 95. Once you look at it, then it's pretty obvious it's the strongest move. Bishop c4, king g6 is surprisingly tough to crack as far as I'm aware, because we don't have any more checks really. So I think it's queen h5. Yeah, so it is queen h5. I guess you could also do rook c7 and rook takes g6 followed by queen e5. That also works. And rook f8 check and knight d7 also works. Okay, got that one. Feels like there might be some kind of fork at the right time, or e6 first, or something like that. We could also capture this, if we need to. There's also pawn to e6. Alright, so checks are good to look at first. Knight e7 check, rook takes, that pretty much does nothing. Knight d6 check, knight takes, and then I don't really see a great follow-up, so I don't think we're checking, at least not on move 1. The only other capture is rook takes bishop, but I think after pawn takes, we do have e6 as a follow-up, but then I think they're playing rook takes g7. Oh, wait, does that work? I think that actually works now that I'm looking at it. Now, hold on. So the question is, do we take the bishop or do we push the pawn first? I think we take the bishop. I think. hold on. Let's double check this. So my idea here is rook takes bishop, pawn takes, e6, rook takes, knight takes, rook takes. We're down a piece, but we do have rook f8 check, king c7, rook f7 check. The rooks get traded, and there's no way to stop the promotion on f8. That's kind of my idea, but now I have to figure out the right move order. Because we can take the bishop, or we can push the pawn. If we take the bishop and then push the pawn, I suppose black doesn't have to... They could just move the rook away to somewhere else on the rank. Or they can even take the knight and then, like, retreat their knight and block the e-pawn or something. So I have a feeling it's e6 first, so that we're not sacrificing material unless he takes on g7 twice. So I think it's this first. e6. Yeah, I think you're right, Thomas. I think it's e6 first. And only if black does capture everything on g7, then I play rook takes d5 and have the idea. Yeah, so I think it's e6 first. And now I do think we need to eliminate the bishop, because if we try to check and then check again, the bishop covers the f7 square. So I think we take the bishop now. Maybe we could even check and then take the bishop. That might also work too. I don't know if that makes a huge difference. So do we check and then take the bishop or take first? I don't think it matters, honestly. I'm going to take the bishop first. Check, check, and then we will promote. Yeah, it also says or rook f8 check first. So it didn't matter at this point. But we did need to start with e6 first. We don't want to take the bishop and then e6. We want to play e6 to begin with. Okay, very nice. That's a little longer-winded one, but that was a nice little sequence. Yeah, you almost kind of have to find that sequence, you know. It's not super hard to calculate. It's more about, like, just the move order sequence, or the move order part of things. This one looks like knight takes e3 and then queen takes d4 checkmate. And if you don't take the knight, then I hit the queen and both the pawns. So if the queen moves away, I guess the queen can move to c3, and then the knight's actually a little bit stuck. Hold on, let's do. I'm assuming the computer will give, like, queen c3 as the response. I mean, worst case scenario, we have the check, and then, you know, I don't know. Let's see, 3, 4, 6, 7, 4. We are equal on material. This at the very least nets us a pawn, but I have to imagine there's something a little bit better. You could also try knight takes c4, bishop takes, and then, like, rook takes d4, and then there's, like, a bunch of discovered checks which look quite dangerous. I think it's this, but I think it's knight takes c4. I think that's the follow-up here. Rook takes, there's queen e3, so that's not great. Queen takes, there's queen e3, that's not great. So I think you take with the knight. Bishop takes, and then I think then you take on d4 with the rook. Okay, says another move is better. Fair enough. I don't think the best move is knight g4, but maybe. Knight c4, bishop c5, I thought we had maybe some kind of queen to b2 to counterattack the queen, or queen a5 to counterattack the queen. I didn't say that, but that was partly what I was thinking there. But I can understand that that does muddy the water. That's for sure. Okay, so what is better? Knight c2, queen takes, queen d4. That looks better, right? Because the king has to go to the back rank, and then that disconnects the rooks. And then we can take the rook on a1. So I think it's knight c2. Knight c2 doesn't work because there's c5. Okay, I'm rushing a little bit. Knight c2 would work if they had to take it, but they can block. Okay, that was sloppy. Maybe it is knight g4. Bishop takes. Pawn takes? I can also throw in rook takes d4, but then c5 does become more annoying. Okay, what do we do here? What do we do? Is it bishop takes c4? I don't think so, because queen takes e3 and everything's defended. Yeah, I thought knight g4, bishop takes, rook takes, but I was worried about c5 in that circumstance. And then our rook is hit, our queen's hit, and then the bishop will save itself. I mean, it could just be knight g4, bishop takes, pawn takes, but it doesn't feel super convincing. We're up one pawn, but it is opposite color bishops, and I don't feel like that's a slam dunk kind of situation for us. If it's not knight takes c4, what else is it? I mean, that looked pretty good in my opinion. Maybe it is just knight g4, because I don't really know what else we do to save the knight. Knight d1, you just take it. Knight c2, we already saw was bad. Maybe queen takes d2 in that situation. The queen on c3 takes d2. And the pawn on c5 is still blocking the queen off at the same time. I think it's knight g4, and then you just take back is my guess. I don't think this works. So I think you just take back. Okay, apparently this is the best way to play. Oh, you don't need to apologize. we're working on all of these together at this rate. Everybody's kind of stepped in and helped solve at least one or two of them. So that's good teamwork here. Yeah, I guess it's just a position. It says black keeps the pawn, although the opposite color bishops gives white fair compensation. However, black's best move was to clearly take on e3, since it would be so passive to retreat with the knight. So I'm a little bit curious about the knight takes c4 move, but let's check it out real fast. Oh, sorry, I have to back up. Okay, knight g4 it does say is best. I thought this was working for us. Oh, I guess that's a little, that's pretty sloppy. The bishop can come back and block the check, and then the queen can block the check if this happens. So this actually does not win us material. We're actually down a piece if we take on c4. Okay, not fantastic calculation there. Yeah, this is the way to go. And it's an equal-ish position, but black is, it's better than anything else black had from the starting point. Alright. Let's see here. Feels like some kind of knight e6, queen g4 check kind of thing. Especially because we also have rook takes b7 that we can throw in. That's got to be good, right? So knight takes e6, pawn takes, queen g4. If the king goes to the 7th rank, we take on b7 with check. If the king moves here, we still have rook takes b7 threatening mate. And even if he protects that, we have the knight on c4 we can take. So this looks to be the way to do it. This is famous game? Oh, that's pretty cool. I wasn't familiar with this particular one, but lots of famous games from Alekhine. So I think we play rook takes b7. I don't think we do this because the queen comes back. I think we take on b7. And then I assume we trade here and take the knight. And then, yeah, it says bishop takes c4. Keeping the queens on the board is best because black's king is exposed, and white is definitely winning in this position. All right, good to go. We can take everything on e2, and then check on g3, and then take the rook. But that feels like just a gigantic trade of pieces, which doesn't feel like the best way to do things. Oh, hold on. Now that I'm looking at this from a bigger picture perspective, I think I might have seen this one in the past in a game. I think it's knight c4. And if pawn takes, there's queen a4 check, and then bishop a3, and the rook swings over, and white is for sure getting mated there. And if you don't take the knight, I'm going to take the bishop and then just kind of invade once the bishop is gone, then there's a lot of problems. The bishop is kind of keeping a lot of stuff defended. So I'm pretty sure it's knight c4. If the queen takes the pawn, you know, we can take the bishop and then rook e2. So I think it's this move. And then, yeah, this is game over. Yeah, this is for sure mate. Yeah, knight c4 is really nice. This is kind of like a good full board awareness type of situation. Like, it's very easy, I think, to get focused on the left half of the board over on the king side, but yeah, you kind of actually hit white from the queen side, which is kind of surprising here. Okay, I've seen this game. I know I've seen the game because the position looks familiar, but I'm not actually remembering exactly what the tactic was here. Pretty sure it's some capture on f5, but I don't remember exactly. I'm leaning towards bishop takes f5. Yeah, I think it's bishop takes f5, pawn takes, knight takes, and then the queen, if it moves to f7 or g6, there's different forks. And if the queen goes to h8, I mean, queen g5 check, king f7, I mean, it's got to be terrible for black, but maybe they can hold. I think in an actual game I would take on f5 here without needing to work out the entire sequence. The queen's going to go to h8. And then I feel like from here I would start calculating further. I imagine check and then some kind of rook e1 to e7. If we could teleport the rook there, that'd be great, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the queen is in just such a bad location. The bishop is pinning the knight. The check is coming here. I'm assuming it's check, and then I'd probably cut the king off with some kind of rook e1 and try to get to e7 type of situation, because then knight h6 is also game over. Oh, knight h6 and then queen g5 is even better, though, isn't it? It's another one of those missing the candidate moves. You're correct. Yeah, as soon as you see knight h6, it's just game over. No need to check on g5. Yeah, you're right. This is what I said earlier. I was saying that my calculation needs to be improved, and those are some good examples as to the problem we're running into. There's not really any great checks. I think you can do knight h2 and try to get to f3, I believe. Knight h2, queen takes, check here, and then pin the queen. Hey, Robbie Cobb. Nice to see you today. The only thing with knight h2 I have to double check is, like, does white give a check themselves? I guess that's covered, so not really. There's no checks they can give. So knight h2 and getting to f3 looks to be lights out. Either he'll have to give up the exchange or lose the queen. Check. I assume we pin, right? I mean, nothing else. Okay, yeah, knight h2, and then this is good. Looks like some kind of d6, bishop, knight f5, and I think the bishop's trapped. Okay. This is a famous one. I think it's rook b8, queen f8, or queen e5, and then rook f8. Would I like to have a match with you? Maybe a little later on I can do some blitz games. I'm trying to get through as much of this Woodpecker method chapter as I can. But maybe later on we can get a game in or something like that. I think it's rook b8, queen e5, rook f8. And if white if he doesn't take the rook, then, you know, we're just up a piece. Yep, there we go. What are we doing here? Rook f5, rook f5, rook e8, king moves. He's going to run out to g6, though, right? Check. Okay, I'm going to go the Ernesto approach and look big picture for a moment. So I can take the rook with check. It's the only check I see. I can take the knight. I can take the pawn. I mean, okay, I can take the a5 pawn. I can take the e4 pawn, but those feel a little out of place. I can also go rook e5 to attack the knight, but then I think he goes knight to d6. So it feels like it's probably one of these three captures. I don't think I'm giving up the queen. I don't really see the follow-up in that case, so it's probably not queen takes f8. It's probably not rook takes e8 either. So it really feels like rook f5 is at least the main move worth considering. At least in terms of captures. Rook bb8. Maybe queen e6 or something, but yeah, that definitely could be a viable option, no doubt about it. I'm going to look at the capture first, just to analyze that, but then, yeah, then we have to find threats in the third category. So take, check here. I have this check, king moves, and then maybe I play bishop takes e4. And that looks good. I mean, I'm going to take the rook. I'm going to be up a couple of pawns. The attack is still going. Rook f5 and then queen e7. Yeah, you're right, Mukund. Yeah, I think bishop takes e4 at the end of that sequence is important. Rook f5 and queen e7 also looks quite dangerous, but maybe black plays queen e7 first, winning. Queen e7, queen f7, right? And then if I trade the queens, the king takes. I think it's this rook f5 move. But maybe there's something better. Okay, so it does end up being this. I think we check on e7. Because if we check on f8 and then play bishop takes e4, there's queen takes e4, and then we lose the queen. So I think we check on e7. And then I think we take the pawn here. And yeah, that is lights out. Okay, very nice. There might have been other ways that are good from the start, but yeah, rook f5, rook e8, queen e7, bishop takes looks good. We're going to be up a bunch of pawns here. This feels like rook takes f3 and then queen h3. You threaten mate on g2 and f3, and I don't see a way for white to stop that. Strategically speaking, it looks like black's also doing quite well. The knight on c4 is pretty strong. And yeah, you just get the checkmate. So this is the threat, I suppose. But not actually. Is it a threat? I mean, you have b4, king c6, b5. I guess king b6 would hit the rook, though. So, okay, maybe it's... I do think it's a threat, but we have moves we can consider first. Okay, so let's look at checks first, right? There's a lot of them, but there's kind of like 4 different checks to consider. Rook c1 check, he takes the knight. That doesn't look great. Rook a5 check, king goes to b6. I feel like my rook is getting kicked around, and that doesn't feel super productive. Knight e4, knight b7, king b6 doesn't look great. Knight e4, king b6 doesn't look fantastic. There's also b4, yeah, b4 is a check as well. No, see, I'm even just missing the check options. Yeah, I mean, b4 is worth considering for sure at the start. King takes. But then the question is, what's the follow-up? Then there's rook d4 check, rook b7, rook b1. There's probably some mating attack here is what it feels like. Our pieces are very active. It feels like we should have some kind of mate around the corner with these rooks and knight in the game. So wait a second. Is it b4, king takes, rook b7? If king c5, rook b5 is mate. If this rook was on b5, that would be mate. So here takes, check. If the king goes to c3... If the king goes to c3, what are we doing? Then there's rook to d3, king c2. Again, feels like there should be some finish around the corner. Some kind of knight comes back to e4 and helps the attack type of situation. Rook takes b8. You eliminate the knight that's protecting the rook, and then you can check and take the rook. That's a good point. So b4, king takes, rook check. If he goes to the a file, then this is just game over. If he goes to c5, it's game over. If he goes to c3, we take on b8. But then there is... Hold on. So I'm just confirming here real quick. Check here, king c3, take b8. Does he have rook takes d6 there? Because every single rook is hanging. So maybe we check on d3 first, right? We play rook to d3, check first, king c2. No, hold on. Then we can't check on c1. Hold on. Hold on, hold on. Okay, I think I've got at least one way that wins. I wouldn't be surprised if there were more. But okay, I think we have... So I think it's b4, king takes, rook check, king c3. I think knight e4 check. If the king goes to c4, rook to d4 is mate. So the king has to keep coming down the board. Then rook to d2 check, king goes down. And then I think we can go rook to b2, threatening the knight, but we're also threatening rook b1, king c2, and kind of bringing the king back up to deliver the mate, because the pawn covers d3 and the knight covers c3. So, okay, that's at least, I believe that's winning. Check. Okay, the puzzle stops here. And it does say king c3, knight e4 check. It says this rook comes back. That makes a lot of sense. Rook to c1 is unstoppable. But I think rook d2 and then the other rook going to b2 also works. I just want to confirm that really quick. In terms of solving the puzzle, I mean, the sequence I'll have to remember. I was thinking rook d2 check and then rook here. Okay, apparently black can avoid getting mated by running the king to d1, but okay, I mean... We're still going to win the knight on b8. Okay, fair enough. I definitely understand that this is mated too, for sure. Okay. Anyways, though, we get the win, or we get the, we got something that would have won, but the sequence in the game is even faster, no doubt about that. Alright, feels like the bishop should be trapped somehow. But it also looks like I can take the pawn on b7 because of back rank issues. Taking on b7 seems simple enough, I guess. But there could be something better. Again, it feels like there could be some way to trap the bishop, but... There's not really a way to make g4 work, at least not immediately. Like, we'd have to go h3, but then of course we lose the rook on e3. I think we want to take the b pawn. I don't think we want to trade the rooks and then take the pawn, because then we run into our own back rank issues. So I think we take the b pawn, is my guess. And yeah, okay, we pick up a pawn, and that's the way to go here. Okay, this feels like a pretty standard knight takes e5, bishop takes f7, or queen takes h5. Oh, hold on. Let me not let me not pre-move there. Okay. I think we have, so it's one of these two knight moves, but I think it's knight c5 because I want to be able to play knight e6 later. 3, 6. We can win at least a pawn, if not more. We go here, queen f7. Then I guess we have knight e6, and then we can take the g7 pawn or the rook. Or we can go queen takes g7, trade everything. Oh no, we don't want to do that. That'll lose a piece. I think it's knight c5 and then knight e6, though. I think that's the way to do it. Yeah, so knight e6, and they can't take because of mate. And then we just take the g7 pawn. Rook moves, knight takes g7, black is for sure getting mated somehow. Or losing material. Okay, what's going on here? We can check here or here. I don't really feel like that does a ton for us there. Doesn't seem to do a ton for us there. We can take the knight, but then I guess pawn takes, and I don't really see a follow-up at that point. Okay, so again, I don't think the checks work. I don't really see the benefit of the capture. What to do, what to do. Could play knight g5 and just go after the h-pawn, maybe, but doesn't feel like the right answer. f4, they take it. Queen b5 idea. Definitely is worth considering, no question. Ah, Thomas, that's good. That's a good one. f4, pawn takes, queen b5, c4, queen takes c4. That's really nice. Yeah, that's got to be it. Very nice. Because, yeah, if they don't take the pawn, what else do they do? If they move the knight, they get mated pretty much, and I guess they could play knight to c2, but you still... What do you do there? Hold on, let's double check that. f4, knight c2. Oh, good point. King e2, there's queen d3, knight e1. Yeah, that's strong. That's very strong. f4, knight c2. I just want to check this real quick. What are we doing there? Because queen b5, there's queen takes f3 to guard the rook. No, that's one of those full board awareness things. f4, queen b5, not the easiest find here in the world. It's easy to see in hindsight, but yeah, that's a good find from Thomas. f4, knight c2 though. Let's real quick figure this one out, because I'm pretty sure this is the way to go. But I just want to see what we do after knight c2. Because our knight is attacked, mate is covered, queen b5, there's queen f3. So that's my main question here. Knight e1, he takes with the knight. Hold on. But we can move the knight pretty much anywhere, and then we have queen e2 check and queen takes c2, right? That's at least available. Yeah, I was going to say knight h4. We move the knight somewhere like h4, pawn takes queen e2. King, I don't know, wherever, and then we take the rook. Yeah, that's the important point, I think. Yeah, we need to move the knight out of the way to free up the e2 square. Okay, I think that's it here. Okay, this is the more straightforward way, but the queen takes c4 is very nice. King e2, we take the rook. I want to make sure that our... Hold on. So let's see. f4. Okay, so this one we saw. c4, take, king e2. There's lots of moves that win. Oops, sorry, not that. There's lots of moves that win. This looks pretty good, though. You're just up the exchange. That's for sure winning, no question. Knight c2. Yeah, it does say knight h4 or knight h2. Apparently knight h2 would also work. But knight h4 was what we thought. Pawn takes, check here, and take the rook. Okay. All right, we got it. There we go. Very nice. 1 right and 10. No, I think you had another one solved earlier first as well. All right, good work, guys. Okay, what to do here? First of all, it feels like a position where you can probably do anything and you're in pretty good shape because white's king is weak and the pieces are active and stuff. I think the f4 move itself is Yeah, I don't think f4 itself is the difficult move, but the follow-up of, like, the queen b5 and taking on c4, being able to see that kind of connection across the other side of the board is, I think, the tricky part. But, yeah, Thomas got it there. Very nice. I think this is knight e5, and I don't really think I would calculate a whole lot here. I don't think there's much to calculate. I mean, you're stopping knight to c4. You're going to play like rook c2 or rook c3 or something. Your pieces are just much more active. I don't really see any checks or captures. So it feels like knight e5. Maybe the other move worth considering is knight d4. Because you threaten the fork. And if pawn takes rook c2, I could definitely see that being worth consideration as well. So it's probably one of these two. Yeah, queen e6 is also a follow-up at that point as well. I feel like in a blitz game, I play knight e5 without a second thought, and I think I'm very happy with my position. But if it's a puzzle, I have a feeling knight d4 might be better. Because we guarantee the rook gets to the c2 square, threatening checkmate. They play knight c4 to block it. Then we have, like... We even have rook takes a2 and then rook a1. That even works, right? Rook takes a2 and rook a1 wins the queen. Queen e6 check, there's knight e5. We take... Probably still winning. Knight d4 is looking better, though. Yeah, I think it's knight d4. We threaten the mate, we threaten the fork. I think now we go rook c2. Is it queen e6 check first, you think, guys? I thought maybe the king went to d2, and I wasn't sure what the next move there was. I don't see another check follow-up. I think it's rook c2 first. If queen to d1, we take the knight, and that's for sure winning, no question. And if they go knight to c4, we might have rook a2 and then rook a1 winning the queen. Or there's some kind of queen e6 type of follow-up. I think rook c2 first. Now the question is, do we take a2 or check? If we check, there's knight e5. And that kind of makes life a little bit more difficult. But I think we take on a2, actually. And then anywhere the queen moves, we just pin the queen. There we go. It does say queen e6 check, knight blocks, rook takes g2. It says black wins this as well. And yeah, I mean, black is for sure winning after a lot of this. All right, very nice. I'm kind of curious if I mean, okay, I understand knight d4 is better, but I assume that knight e5 is still very good. Yeah, knight e5 is still like -3, but knight d4 is better for sure. -5. I get that. That makes perfect sense. Okay, let's keep going. That one was surprising. Yeah, I think, like I said, in a blitz game, I play knight e5, I think, without much thinking, and I'm pretty happy. But knight d4 is even stronger. Yeah, that was a good find. I think here it's knight e4 taking advantage of this pin, right? Knight e4, and then I think I'm just taking the queen or the rook afterwards. I guess there's knight to d4, which is a little bit tricky. Counterattacking me. But I think worst case scenario, I take the queen, and then I take the e6 pawn. And then I'm just up, I guess I'm not up anything there, actually, now that I look at it. Oh, hold on. Here, take. I just take the bishop on b7. I think I just take the bishop on b7 there, and I'm just up a piece. So I think that's the way to go. Yeah, b7's hanging, yep. Okay. Didn't consider this. Knight takes d6, knight d4. But I think worst case scenario, we take on b7, and then we just have, like, a rook and 2 pieces for the queen, which looks pretty good. So I think we actually give up the queen here. I would play bishop takes b7, I think, in a game. And then I would have a bishop, a knight, and a rook versus the queen, which looks pretty good, right? So maybe there's something better. Okay, it does say this is the way to go. And yeah, we have bishop, knight, rook versus queen, which is a material advantage. Okay. I think I've seen this one. It's like, I think it's bishop takes f7. If the rook takes, there's queen g5 check hitting the king and the rook. If the king takes, it's queen h7 winning the queen. And if it's queen takes, it's still rook takes d8 and queen g5. So I think we're taking f7 and then d8. We could take b6, but of course checking on g5 and taking the rook is even better. You used to losing your queen? Alright, this feels like a queen b3, pinning the rook. There is queen f7 or bishop e6. Oh, hold on. There's also knight f5 here. Actually, now that I'm looking, knight f5 is even stronger. Knight f5. If the bishop takes, we take the rook and we're up the exchange. If the rook takes our queen, we take their queen with check, and then again we're up the exchange. And if the queen moves to protect the rook, we take the rook, check, and then win the queen. So this has got to be it. This is it here. Yeah, knight f5. Somehow white drew this game. But white is definitely better here. I guess you can. There's some light square weaknesses you'd have to be careful about. But yeah, white's better for sure. This first instinct is like get rid of the knights and check somehow. Knight d6 also. Well, okay, sorry, our queen is hit, so that's important to recognize. I think that if that's the case, we eliminate the knight, make the fork, and then probably we take something. We're attacking so many things in that position. The bishop, the queen, the rook, the d5 pawn. I think I'm taking on d5 and playing knight d6 without really much calculation in a game. Yeah, and he literally says the threats are too much for black. There's just way too many things that are being hit. If queen e6, you know, then I calculate what I want to do, but this is for sure winning. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes some of these we can, some of these I'm finding pretty quick, and then other ones it's a lot trickier, and it's almost like there's a hard one, and then it's like a couple easy in a row, and then a hard one, and you know, chill mode and activates, and then things are easier at that point. Okay, so rook takes b2, king takes check, check, something like that. I think, again, I'm probably playing this without a ton of calculation. Which is maybe a bad thing. Again, this is why I need to work on calculation. I don't want to play so many positions just based on intuitive feel, but, I mean, this looks very good. Plus, then I can even play rook f1 at the right time. So, I mean, I think white's just probably getting mated here, is my assumption. So I think it's rook b2, and then check. And then check. And then the question is, now do I check here or check here? I think they both work. I think you can check first and then rook f1 and you're going to win the piece. Oh, hold on. You probably need to check with the queen first. Because if I check with the rook first and then the queen, the king can come to the d2 square. So I think I need to use the queen first, then this. Yeah, and the dragon, when you're playing black, only one plan. You take b2. As white, you take, you know, h7 and push the h-pawn. As black, you take the knight on c3 or the pawn on b2. Okay, and this wins the queen. Rook d1, you take the rook and then the queen. Alright, let's keep going. Feels like bishop takes pawn and then h3. I think you've been saying, Ernesto, that I get the... that I solved the in-game ones pretty quick. I mean, this is this is another one of those in-game ones. All right, this feels like, okay, we're with Max Uwe, I think is how you say the name. Feels like bishop takes, king takes, queen g4 check, whichever way the king goes. If king h1, there's queen f3, so probably king f1. Queen takes d1, rook blocks, queen f3 is mate. If king goes back to g2, check on g4 once again, check on f3. I think we're just taking like every single rook in this position. Okay, something better. Okay, queen f3 to f2 is even faster, I guess. Taking d1, yeah, it says taking d1 is also good enough. because after king g2, you come right back to g4, and you win the rook later anyway, so, okay. Knight e7 check, rook takes, check, rook blocks, takes as mate. And if you don't take the knight, I take on c6. Rook is hit. Bishop d5 check, pawn takes, rook takes, and I pick up one of the two bishops with an extra pawn. That's at least an idea. If I'm not checking on d5, what else am I doing? I guess you could go rook d5. Maybe that's even better. Is it, though? Hold on. Rook d5, pawn takes, bishop takes, king moves, take the rook. He gets the g3 pawn, and that feels maybe not as clear-cut. But I guess that's the same thing. If I check and then take with the rook, I think he's also still taking the g3 pawn. But then we get the d7 bishop, and check on g7 is very annoying. So I do think I think rook d5... I think bishop d5 is better than rook d5. I think it's bishop d5. And I will point out, if the king moves away, I think we just take on h7 and hit the bishop, as well as the check on h8. I think it's bishop d5. Okay, well, if he wants to do it this way, we're just up a pawn. In the game, a draw... Let's see. Yeah, I would think bishop takes g3, rook takes d7. Yeah, we have a big pawn majority on the queen side. That's a good point. We also have rook g7 check and taking the h-pawn in this, if he takes on g3. I'm a little curious. Yeah, I don't think rook d5 works as well, because we do get the queenside pawn majority, but black gets the g3 pawn and has the kingside pawns. I can double check, but I think rook d5 at the start is not as good. Yeah, okay, so rook d5, it says, is like more of a drawish version of things. Pretty much black takes on g3, and then it says pretty close to a draw. Whereas, yeah, rook d5, or bishop d5 check, white is better. Maybe white's not winning, but white is better, we could say. And this is pretty good for white, because g7 check is annoying. Okay. Feels like f4. If queen takes, we win the bishop on h3, and if pawn takes, we take the knight on h4, and anything else they do, we take the bishop or the queen. Okay, pretty straightforward. This feels like rook takes f6, rook f1, and bishop g5 mate. I guess there is bishop f5, but then we take there, and it feels like black's getting mated, for sure. I guess there is king e7. Yeah, that's Thomas's f4, you're right. I had to think of f4 in the position once Thomas puts that, once he puts that move in my mind from the earlier position, it's popping up again. Rook takes f6, king e7. I guess we just have queen g5 with a ton of super strong threats, worst case scenario. So, I mean, I think this is one where I sacrifice without a ton of calculation. Now, do I take with the pawn or the rook? Or is there something else? Bishop g5, king g7 doesn't feel right. If I take here, there's queen takes e2 hitting the rook, which is kind of annoying. So maybe it's rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king moves. And then, like, I don't know, knight f4. I guess there's queen f1. Maybe even just knight to g3? Even just... Oh, hold on. Let's not go knight g3, queen takes f1, and rook e1. That would be very sad. Hold on. So we could take with the pawn, and then if queen takes e2, there is queen to d6 check, right? King f7. pawn takes g6, king g8. Then I don't see a win, I guess, right? Because queen d5 check, he can block with the rook, I guess. Okay. Pawn takes, queen takes. Queen d6 check. Am I missing any candidate moves? g5, king e7. g5, king e7, and I don't see a great follow-up. So there, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king moves. Bishop g5, king moves. I don't know. It feels like there's a bunch of moves that are good. Yeah, rook takes f5 looks good. Pawn takes looks good. I could make an argument for bishop g5 check first too. Pawn takes, queen takes. Rook takes, pawn takes. Queen takes, king here. So maybe it's like bishop g5 and queen takes, but bishop g5 at the start here, check here, and then the king runs to g7. Jeez. I think the best version I've seen so far is pawn takes, queen d6 check, king f7. But then how do I take on g6? Queen takes g6, king e7, bishop g5, king d7. I think black's running. Pawn f6 check, king d8, no more checks. Okay, I mean, it's one of these two moves. I don't think it's bishop g5 letting the king escape a little bit, so we have to be pretty quick with what we do, though, because this is some very annoying stuff. Rook takes, pawn takes. Check there. Pawn takes, queen takes. Queen d6, king there. Queen d7 first. I have a feeling it's... I don't know. It would not surprise me in the slightest if it was rook takes, but I feel like it's pawn takes for some reason. I feel like it's pawn takes, but quite honestly, I can't really put my finger on why. I'm going to take with the pawn. Okay. It's got to be rook takes then, right? Okay. Now I'm just completely wrong here, and it's neither one of those. What is it instead, though? Bishop g5 first? Bishop g5, I thought king g7, and I didn't see a follow-up check. I didn't see a follow-up check there. The only other check that's there is g5, king e7, but then I didn't really see a follow-up there either. What am I missing here? It's not rook takes, and it's not pawn takes. So then the only moves really that are left over are bishop check and pawn check. Right? Am I missing something? I can't move the knight because he takes on f1. So it's either bishop check or pawn check. I already tried rook f5. Rook f5 wasn't the move. Queen d7, then bishop g5. Oh, are you saying a quiet move here with queen d7? Oh, I'm sorry. When you were saying queen d7, I thought you were referring to a different move order. But you're saying queen d7 here. Oh, that's a very reasonable move. You're not threatening bishop g5. I think your threat's actually bishop g7 because you need to take away the e5 square. So maybe it is queen d7, and then bishop g7 is a big threat, or bishop g5 in some circumstances. I think it is queen d7. Yeah, right? So queen here, checkmate. Queen takes e2, checkmate. Rook f8, or rook g8. Then we have like a very big free move to attack with. Rook e7, there's bishop g5, then take the rook. Yeah, I think it's queen d7. Ah, that's a strong move right there. That's very strong. I wonder if there's any other ways to win from here, because it feels like there should be some different options, but queen d7 is a tough one. Very, very nice for finding that. Are there other moves that are good? No, it is queen d7. If we don't play queen d7, we are not winning anymore. Very nice. That's a great quiet move. Lock the king in place, and then you just have so many threats. Yeah, very, very, very nice. That's a great one. Okay. Bishop takes f5, rook takes h3, bishop takes h3, and I think we're just up a pawn, maybe 2 pawns. The engine's in his brain. You can't turn his brain off. It's got to be bishop f5, right? I mean, what else would it be? I don't think there's really any other moves that are worth calculating. Take the pawn. He takes h3. Take back with the bishop. He can trade bishops and then take the e5 pawn, but we're just up a g pawn. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the easiest win in the world, but it looks like it should be pretty good. All right, have a good rest of the day, Ernesto. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. I'm leaning towards bishop f5. I don't think it's an easy win, but I do think it's the way to go. So I assume it's bishop takes because too many things are hanging. So yeah, it does say white is better here. Okay. Feels like rook f4 or rook e3 or something like that. Rook f4. If rook takes f4, queen e1 check, rook blocks, I can push the pawn and take the rook. Worst case scenario, that is 2 minor pieces versus a rook and a very exposed king. If the king takes instead, I have queen e4 check and I take the rook. So it's got to be this. I think I just check and take the rook, right? There's a better move available. There's probably some kind of checkmate here. But I mean, okay, this looks very good, no doubt. Bishop is pinned. That's not happening. I mean, maybe you go queen e2 and you hit the rooks. I don't know. I can't really imagine why queen e4 is not just the best way to play. Bishop is pinned, so can't move the bishop here. Is there like queen d6, king takes, queen g6, and then take the rook? Hold on, I could actually maybe see why queen e4 would not be so simple. Queen e4, king g5, take the rook, check, knight blocks, king f6. I wonder if that would somehow defend for white. That actually looks like an insane way of like, actually, how do I stop that threat? I guess I'd have queen a6. Yeah, I'd have queen a6. Okay, so that would still be winning. Okay, I mean, what else is there? Is it like, I don't know, knight e5, and then if the queen takes e5, then we pin? Feels incredibly unnecessary. I don't know. I know that this is winning, like for sure. Queen h6, the queens get traded, and then they take the pawn on f5. I'm not sure about that one. Could be knight e7 on move 1 or something. Knight e7 trying to go to g6 or something like that. Knight e7, queen takes, knight check, king g3. Kind of feels like the king's escaping in that case, unless I'm missing something. I mean, in a game I check and take the rook without really a question. Could also play king g3 right away, right? Yeah. Maybe it's knight e5 and then bishop d6. Could be king e7 first. Could definitely be king e7 followed by bishop h6. That makes a lot of sense. But then even there, the king goes to g3, you play f4, like... I'm going to throw a couple of moves on the board here, but I know queen e4 was winning, or at least I'm like pretty positive. Let's play king e7. Let's try knight e5. It is knight e5 apparently, but it says there's nothing wrong with checking and taking on d3. There's nothing wrong with that. So in the game he played knight e5, and that's, you know, definitely good enough, you could say. Okay. This feels like rook f2 and e3. Rook f2, take e3, I take on f2 afterwards. I think that's pretty straightforward. I mean, I take the queen, and then I take on e5. I would probably take with the bishop, personally. And then the g3 pawns hit, the knight's hit, and we're up... we're not actually ahead material, but if we get to take on g3, then we are up a pawn at that point. Yeah, some of these are quite difficult, and then some of these feel like they should be in the easy category. Or maybe the way I could word it is, some of these feel like they should be in the advanced category, or the advanced chapter, and then some of these feel like they're in the right, you know, the right spot, I guess. I'm curious to see what the advanced chapter looks like later on. Okay, this feels like d6. Bishop takes b7, and then I win the bishop on d6. If the queen moves anywhere else, they have to go back to like b8. If they go to c8, we have d7. And if they go to b8, worst case scenario, I play knight c6 or something like that. Or maybe I play d7 and then knight c6. This is for sure the move. I think I go d7, rook blocks, and then knight to c6, forking the queen and the rook, and I think I win the exchange. There might be other ways that work too, but this looks good. And then here, and we win the exchange, right. Okay. Feels like bishop takes d4, hit the rook. If they take the knight, we get the rook, that's great. If they take the bishop, we check, we take the rook, they get the knight, but then I think we have e3 at the end of all of that to attack the pinned knight. So this looks pretty straightforward. And then pawn takes a5, we have e3. And then we win the knight. Okay, I've seen this kind of pattern before. I forget if it's queen h5 first or if it's knight takes e6 first. It might also be knight takes f7. Let's see. So knight takes e6, pawn takes e6, queen h5 check. If they go g6, I can take on d5 and the e-pawn's pinned. But they can just play king to d7 and get away from the pin. And I don't see a clear-cut knockout blow there. If I do rook takes, pawn takes, check. Sorry, I'm yawning. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen h5 check, g6. I don't see a knockout blow there. So I don't think we take right away. So maybe it's queen f3. We threaten mate and the knight, but then black can bring the knight back or something and keep everything defended. The other option is take f7, then queen f3. I think that's it. We take f7. Geez, take f7 and then queen f3. If the knight retreats, we take on e6. And if black moves to the e file, we take the knight. And if they go to the g file, we have rook takes e6 and bishop d5. I think that's it on this one. Oh, sorry, take there. I guess knight e5 is possible, but then you can... There's a number of moves that work, like bishop g5 is probably good, queen h5, and white is winning in this position with the active pieces. Alright. Three-piece lineup. Bishop b6, knight takes, guards the rook, I think. Or queen takes, counterattacks our queen. Bishop d8, there's rook takes. Bishop b8, there's queen takes, so... I don't feel like we're moving the bishop right away. Could be some kind of bishop a5, and then it's... Oh, wait, we don't necessarily want to let the attack on f2 happen either. Okay, hold on. There is also bishop takes d5, which is worth considering. Pawn takes, queen takes. If the rook blocks, we take d7. That's good. If the king goes to to e8, then we have queen h5 check, which takes one of these two pieces. If the king goes to f8, I think we play... Maybe there it's now bishop d6 or queen h5. The more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking it's bishop takes d5. But I don't want to rush things. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king e8, take. That's good. Rook blocks, takes there. King f8. King f8. I think we still take h6, h5, and then bishop d6 or something. I think we're winning at least a bunch of pawns. We're winning like 3 pawns, and we're giving up 2 pieces for a rook, but we're winning 3 pawns in the process, which should be very, very good for us. So I think it's this. And then I think it's either bishop d6 right away or it's queen takes pawn first. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one first. I guess I'd probably take the pawn first. Okay, it does say taking the pawn first, and then it says bishop d6 afterwards. Black has 2 pieces for a rook, but fighting against 3 pawns with the weak king is far too much. Yeah, so white's winning mostly because we just have a ton of extra pawns. We could probably even transition into an endgame at some point, and the 3 extra pawns is going to be a huge assistance. Okay, good on that one. This looks like rook f7 and then some back rank check, which would result in mate. Or if the queen takes, I guess I would trade the rooks, check, and then attack the rook that's pinned, and then e6 or something. I think this has got to be it, yeah. It says queen takes, rook takes, check here, and queen e6. Oh, okay, queen e6 is definitely better than queen c4. Yeah, that's no question. Okay. Rook check, king moves, queen d3, and then take the rook. That looks good. So the bishop will block. But then I have rook f8, king f8, knight f5, king g8, and then queen f8's very pretty. Yeah, queen e6 in the end. Yeah, you're correct about that in the previous one. And then queen f8, king takes, rook d8's mate, king h7, queen g7. Okay, this one's very pretty, I think. Take that, check, and then here I check on f8. Because if we check on d8, the king moves to h7, and we have no more... I guess even there you have rook h8, but the king continues to run. I think it's queen f8, though, and then rook d8. That's a very pretty one. It says rook d8 check, rook h8, the king starts to run away, and white kind of runs out of checks. I guess white is still up a piece, but black is taking a bunch of pawns. Yeah, this queen f8 move is very nice. This is very pretty. Okay. Feels like it should be rook takes, rook h3, and then queen f2. We need to take on e3 first to get rid of the protection of the queen. Knight e6 is the first move that jumps out at me. But then he has rook e8. I take the pawn, he takes the knight, so maybe not. Rook e6 is another move that's worth considering. That might be better, actually. Rook e6, bishop takes, knight takes. How do you guard the rook and the mate? I don't think you can. I think it's rook e6. There we go. Very nice. Knight f5, pawn takes, take the bishop is a free pawn. Knight f5, rook takes, take the knight is also still a free pawn. So I think this is a pawn. Knight e2 check, knight g3 check, and then take the rook looks good. You could maybe even take on d4, but then the rook gets to move away. So I think you want to do it this way, and then you're just up the exchange. Rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, take d3. You're up a pawn there at least. If you try to take g2 first, you can't take on d3 after because your queen is hanging. So I think you take this way first, then this way, and then I guess you just take f1. Okay, very good. If I check right away, the king runs to d2. Can I prevent the d2 defense? Knight here, I get mated, so that doesn't work. White is threatening rook takes d7, which is quite dangerous. Rook takes b2, bishop takes. I don't really have a follow-up. Bishop a3. He might even just take d7 and ignore what I'm doing, maybe? And that looks pretty scary, I will say. We are up a piece here, I will say. So we are ahead a piece. We are ahead a piece. We are ahead a piece. So what are we doing? I think if we get to develop and castle, we're probably just winning, I imagine, with the extra piece. But the question is, how do we get castled? Bishop a3 takes on d7. I guess then we take on b2, right? We take on b2, the king eventually goes to d2, then we take on d7, and the rook on d1 is blocked. So bishop a3, pawn takes a3. Queen takes a3, or rook b1 check first, and then I think we eventually castle. And maybe we are up a pawn? Maybe? Feels like bishop a3 is the move, because I don't really know what else we do if it's not bishop a3. I don't think it's rook takes b2. I don't think it's queen a1. We need to kind of make a threat, or else white takes on d7 for free. We can't really move the queen anywhere else. We could play knight to d5. And that might just be the best move, like knight d5. I guess white can take. That gets a little scary, though, I will say. My knight is still not terribly easy to protect. I'm going to go with bishop a3. Okay, so bishop a3, and then I thought maybe we just castle or we take the pawn first. I guess we take the pawn first and then castle is my assumption. No. Do we castle first? Yes. I can't really imagine white taking the pawn and then castling is bad. I'm just going to check. Huh. Interestingly enough, if we take the pawn and then castle, white has rook a1 or rook a4. I guess white gets the a pawn. Maybe this is maybe that's not the most clear cut. Okay, that's fair enough. That is a reasonable difference. If the king goes to d2, I guess you just don't want to take the pawn. You want to attack the queen first. Okay, fair enough. So we should castle before we take the pawn in that position. Okay. Feels like d5, and then some pins on the c file. So d5, pawn takes, get the rook, trade. They can't take my rook because I get mate. They probably have to take my knight, but then I'm up the exchange once I take on c8. Actually, I'm up a full rook, right? I think I'm up a full rook. So yeah, I think d... Wow, not d5. Is it rook e... Oh, he has rook e5. Maybe that's the problem. Okay, I jumped the gun there. If we move the knight, we can hit the queen. So like knight f7, but then the king takes. Queen h5. If g6, we take here and probably have something good there. Knight f7, king takes. Knight takes c6, rook takes. That doesn't feel great. If we don't move the knight, they take it. Okay, so knight f7 is the main move I'm looking at. King takes. You could take on e6, but I don't see a great attack there. So I think you want to check on h5. King e7. Double the rooks. Rook takes, King d7, you have check and mate. King here, you have check, check, and mate. If g6, check, moves, check, trade queens, take. Okay, so it's definitely knight f7. I didn't actually consider the queen moving, which is not a great thing to miss. But I think you trade rooks and then you go to d8 and you pick up c6. There we go. Okay. I think we have rook takes pawn, queen h5 check, and then bishop takes g6, and I think black's getting mated. I think you have to take with the bishop to cover the f7 square. Okay. Let's see what to do here. If we can kick this rook away, then the bishop is in some trouble. So bishop c6. I guess they have rook b8 though, right? So bishop c6, rook b8, and the queen is protecting. Oh, hold on. Maybe it's... I think it's actually rook takes knight and queen a4. Rook takes, bishop takes, queen a4, hit the rook, hit the bishop, and I think we're going to win a piece there. Or, you know, 2 pieces for a rook. Okay. This queen is protecting this. Is there a way to deal with that? We can play bishop c2 to hit the queen, but it just goes back to e6. And I don't see a fantastic follow-up there. We can take e7 and then target c5 somehow, but I don't really see a way to attack a second thing at the same time. Not 100% sure on this one. Take. Well, think that leads to a ton. Knight to d2, queen goes to e5 or e6, probably e6, and still the trade of pieces is in the air. Oh, wait a second. Maybe it's rook takes c5 because we're taking advantage of this pin. So if rook takes c5, bishop takes c5, then we take on d8, and I guess we're just up a pawn with a good position as far as I can tell. I think. I could see some tricks there, but I think that's good for us. And if he takes on g5 and then plays queen e7, that's a little trickier. But then queen h5 feels like it should be good. There is h6, or queen takes c5. But then we have queen f7 and knight e6. Okay, I think it's rook c5. Knight takes. And, okay, so it does mention queen e7, and then it says bishop takes d5. But it does say queen h5, h6, queen f7, and you're up a bunch of pawns. Okay. Alright, white is threatening to mate us pretty much. I think we have rook g3 check, and then take and then check on e3 and take the rook afterwards, and that's got to be great for us. We're up a pawn, and we're gonna for sure be able to win more or guarantee the queen trade. There might be something swifter, you could call it. Check here, check, rook blocks. I don't think that works. So I think it's rook g3 and then queen e3. And yeah, white doesn't have any attack anymore, and we're probably going to pick up the e4 pawn or trade queens. Okay, good. I think this is knight takes, pawn takes, bishop d5 to trap the rook. I think I've seen this kind of pattern before. And here, I think you can just, no, knight a3, there's bishop takes a3, right? Yeah, so not that. Okay, fair enough. I should have thought this one through a little more. This pin is actually quite annoying. Could go queen b3 though, I think. Queen b3, you take this, bishop takes f7, and then I think there's, I don't know, feels like some strong attack with queenside castling. This is looking pretty good. I think we take f7, yeah. And it just says the king, black king is a decisive factor, no more moves are needed. Kind of cut the calculation short a little bit here, but I kind of felt the same way. I think black's king is super weak. Bishop f4, castle queenside, queen e6, and I think black's in trouble. Alright, feels like queen f7 check, rook takes, king moves. Maybe rook d1 check, king moves. Take, push pawn, something like that. Or check and then push pawn. There could be something better, but this looks pretty clear-cut. I think I check. And then what next there? Probably trade queens and push pawn is my assumption. But we don't need to rush the... Here, I'm going to check here, and then take. Maybe we just check and take a pawn. If I push, black plays rook e8, and then my pawn is actually lost as far as I can tell. So I don't think we want to do that. I think we just check. And yeah, white's, we're going to be up a couple pawns, and if king c6, bishop d5 is mate, so the king has to go to the back rank on c8, and then we can take on g7, and black's in big trouble. Actually, king to c8, we would probably go bishop d5 first and win material. Okay, bishop e4 check, knight takes, queen check, and then take the rook, I believe. Oh. I mean, now we have knight g6. King h7. Knight e7 check and take the rook again at the very least, right? Yeah, and then we can just take the rook. Okay. Queen b3, bishop e6 is kind of annoying. Knight c4, though, I think. Knight c4, they take, we take on d5, we fork, and we take on c4. They can't guard both knights at the same time. Dalton, when we have this great stream in the next 2 days? So I start the stream every day at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I don't know exactly what time zone you're in, but Eastern time on the United States. So we started about 2.5 hours ago, or close to it. And the plan is to start at 10 at the same time tomorrow. I'm not planning on streaming on the weekends, but I plan on streaming Monday through Friday starting at 10 a.m. That's the game plan, at least until we complete the Woodpecker method. That's kind of the goal, is to complete the Woodpecker method cycles. I plan on doing, as I've said before, the positional version of the Woodpecker method too as well. But yeah, I'll be starting at 10 a.m. Every weekday, Monday through Friday. And then probably going for about 2 to 3 hours each day, somewhere in that range. We might go a little bit longer today, because I don't have a whole lot in the afternoon going on. Okay. Oh, very welcome. I appreciate you hanging out as well. Makes it more fun when there's people to chat with and bounce answers to the puzzles off of and stuff like that. Bishop takes f7, queen takes, I get the bishop there, which looks good. Otherwise, if the king takes, I check on d5, and then I probably have mate around the corner. So I think I do this, and then this. Okay, we finished the... Well, this is not the end of the intermediate, but it is the end of this particular intermediate chapter, I guess. We can check it out here. Okay, so we finished 5.3. We still have 6.1, 6.2, and 7 for the intermediate exercises, and then 8 is all the advanced exercises. So I wanted to do at least 100 puzzles today. I planned on doing more. Might do more than, let's see what we can do, but I'm going to continue into the next chapter. And let's keep going. Well, at the very least, we're going to get to 500. No question about that. But I might go further past that. Okay, rook f3, pawn f3, bishop h3 is going to lead to mate. Rook f3, queen f3, we just win the queen. I don't think queen h1, queen g2... I think the king runs away in that case. So I think it's rook f3, bishop f3. Oh, not bishop f3. Well, then it's got to be queen h1, queen g2, and queen f3. Okay. So it says bishop takes f3, pawn takes. And this is not so clear-cut, I suppose. I don't know what that division sign means. I've literally never seen that in my life. Anyways, okay. So we should check on h1, then take g2. That way we keep the bishop alive. Knight g3, knight takes, bishop takes, check, take, and then we pick up a pawn, I think. I think we just go g6 to trap the bishop is my guess. Rook takes, queen e5, we threaten mate and the rook. If he brings this rook over, that makes it a little bit trickier. We also have bishop takes, pawn takes, then rook takes. That might be better. No. If that's not the way, then it should be this one. Take h2, king f1. Oh, there's bishop f4 trapping the queen, right? Okay, I think that's the idea. I think this bishop f4 move is the key kind of linchpin to all of this. I'm going to guess that bishop takes h2 is also better for black at the beginning, but I can understand it not being as good. Yeah, rook takes b2 is better, bishop takes h2 is good for black, though. Okay, fair enough. Bishop g6, king here, bishop f7, king here, queen d8, king here, bishop e8. I've seen this little weird pattern where you chase the king around and you try to get the king away from the queen. That's kind of the whole goal with those checks. All right. If we push right away, black plays bishop d3. But if we play bishop c5 or bishop to b8 first, okay, I think it's bishop c5. If we go bishop b8, they take the pawn. You know, we try to push. They do have the push of c5 to open up the defense. If we go bishop c5 and they take, we push, there's no way to get the bishop to protect a8. They could play bishop d3 to stop a6 in the first place, but then we take the pawn. I guess they get the e4 pawn there then, though, right? But then we can come back. But then they go back. Okay, hold on. a6, bishop d3 is important. If they take on e4, then we go bishop c5 and we win. Bishop c5 first, they play bishop d3 anyways. We take d6, then they take e4. We push, but then they have to give up c5. I don't know if that's winning, but two connected pass pawns on the queen side looks pretty good. So I think it is bishop c5 to start with. And then we take. It does say, though, that black should be able to draw this. Bishop c5 is nevertheless the best move, since it's the only one that has any chance of winning. And in the game, white did win. So bishop c5 is the important point to start with. Okay. I think we take the pawn and then take the queen because the knight's pinned. I don't think we want to trade the queens then take the pawn because our rook is hanging at the end. So I think we do it this way. I think we just take the rook here then. And we are up the exchange. And once they take the bishop, we'll get the d3 pawn. Alright, knight f3, there's rook takes. So the rook is covering this and the queen is covering this, which means nobody's covering the bishop. So I think I take the bishop. If the rook takes, we fork. And if the queen takes, we mate. So the bishop is left unprotected. I think here we can just trade stuff. Oh, okay. Knight f3 is even better. Knight f3, if king h1, rook takes f1 is mate. If king f2, take the rook, take the queen, and yeah, this is even better. Rook takes f1 is probably winning, but I can definitely understand knight f3 being significantly better, for sure. No question. Okay, bishop takes, pawn takes. Some kind of check. King moves. If they block, I think I trade queens and then take the knight and I'm up a piece. I don't think I check first because the knight blocks. But even there, rook d1 looks pretty good. Also, there's b5 maybe. So I think I have to take the knight first. I think that's pretty clear cut. And then I think I check. King moves. And then I think white's better there regardless of what they play, but there's probably a strong follow-up sequence. Take. Trading there and checking doesn't really do a whole lot. They block. I think it's take. I think check. If we check on the e file, the bishop blocks. It doesn't do much. I think we check here. I guess it is possible to just take the pawn. Maybe I could also be over kind of reading too much into this, but if we're going to take the pawn, we might as well check and then take the pawn. Okay, here I thought we had bishop takes b5. And then queen takes, and then we take the knight. Does it matter which one we do? We can also take this. I'm going to trade. No. Knight takes also works. Queen takes works. I mean, okay. King d2 to d3, I guess. Man, it's really wanting to continue the sequence. That's interesting. If I take here, rook d5, there's king c3. Okay, that feels a little bit unnecessary to continue the puzzle that far, but white is definitely up a couple pawns with a good position. So, yeah, take here, check. I thought if the king moved, yeah, we just take on d4, which is much better for white. If the queen blocks, you trade the queens and take the knight. That's good. If b5, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen blocks. Okay, it says knight takes is better than queen takes, but I mean, you know, white's better here, white's also better here, but I guess I understand that, you know, king to d2 is better than king f1, and then knight takes d4. a4 is also good, as long as you're not playing king e, even here king e3, and you know this is bad because our knight's pinned, but you can go to c3 and you're up a bunch of pawns. Okay, let's keep going. I think I've seen this kind of pattern before. You take a3, you hit the bishop with the knight, and then you push the a pawn. Not a3 right away. That's surprising. Do you take c3? Guess you take c3. a3, king to d2 is a draw. But if you take c3, you're winning. Okay, you get 3 connected pass pawns instead of 2. That looks pretty good. Alright. It looks like rook takes bishop, pawn takes, queen takes g6, check. And then I don't feel like I would really calculate past this. I mean, this just looks so good. White's attack is so clearly winning that no more variations are needed. Fair enough. I do think that is a slight drawback to this book or course. If you're kind of on the lower rated side of things, you're probably not able to understand that this is a winning attack without more calculation being wanted, you could say. Whereas I'm able to recognize that this is clearly winning without much calculation needed, because you kind of just see how good the pieces are and how exposed the king is, and you're actually not even down material. Once we take the e6 pawn, we're actually just up a pawn. But I can understand, you know, this comment being a little bit distasteful if you're like a lower rated player. I do think I saw some reviews that kind of criticized this type of, you know, oh, we don't need to look at more moves because white's winning, when it's, you know, some players would not see that it's so clear cut. Okay, bishop takes g6, queen g6, you either take the bishop or you mate on f7. Okay, take the bishop. Continuing the puzzle, I think we have to play queen to g3 to guard the h2 pawn. No. Or, oh, bishop f4 is better. There's no question. We don't want to play h3 because that g2 pawn's pinned, but bishop f4 is for sure better. No, no question about that. All right. I think we can take on e4. Rook takes, queen takes, and then no matter how he takes e4, we take on c8. I think we pick up a pawn here. And we're in good shape. Okay. Rook f4 is my first instinct, but then I'm not sure what the next move is. Pawn takes f3, queen takes g6. I can take on e2, the knight takes, I take back. It looks good, but doesn't feel so convincing. So convincing. I have a feeling it's like rook takes f4 and then queen g3, and then some kind of bishop c5, bishop h3, pawn takes f3. It feels like the king is just super exposed in that position. Okay, I think I'm just going to pull the trigger. It's kind of one of these positions where I don't think you have to have all the calculation, but it just looks very, very bad. Yeah, yep. So again, we're down, you know, we're down the exchange, but bishop h3, bishop c5, e3, queen f4, it's just, there's so many threats in the position, and unless white has some kind of immediate retaliation, which I don't see that they do, then yeah, I don't think we have to calculate much further. Knight takes d5 and knight takes e7 tends to be pretty good in a position like this. If he goes bishop h6, we can take the knight on f4, or play knight f4 ourselves. Or, sorry, then knight on h4, I think is what I meant to say. Okay. Rook takes, bishop takes e6, bishop takes, rook takes. We're eventually pulling the queen away from guarding f8, so I think we do it this way. Okay, up a piece. Not even just a piece, we get checkmate. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight f5. Oh, maybe knight f5 first. Knight f5, pawn takes, queen g5, threaten mate. Knight e8, I win the queen. That looks good. G takes f5, queen g5 is winning. Okay, feels like we take on h5 or g4 and just blast through the h-file, is my impression. Knight takes h5, pawn or bishop takes h5. But maybe rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, knight g6. There is bishop h3 to e6, though. The bishop h3 resource, if we eliminate the bishop, is very strong. Maybe we can do that, like, rook takes, queen takes, bishop h3, queen f3. Yeah, I'm thinking about that move order now. Maybe even rook f1 traps the queen. That might even just straight up trap the queen. I think that looks pretty good. So it's either rook f1 or checking first, but I think if you check, then they have the g2 square available. I think you can just trap the queen, I believe. And then take that. Okay. Probably take on g3. Check on e6 also looks good. I don't know if it really matters, the move order. I'm going to check on e6 first. Okay, take on g3, then check. And then, yeah, king f8, you have queen f2. King h8, you have queen h2, and you pick up the rook. I don't think you had to calculate that entire thing out, but I think once you saw rook takes g4, bishop h3, and rook f1, I think, you know, you get the gist that white's winning material. Okay, this feels a little bit disconnected or barely held together here. Knight takes, does at least defend. There's also this line up towards an undefended bishop with the pinned pawn. E4 actually looks very strong, oddly enough. If I can get rid of this, then I can take all the stuff on d7 and fork on b6. So e4 is kind of just like blasting the position, and I think that looks quite strong. I don't think you want to trade knights and then e4 because the rook can take. So I think you actually want to play e4 right away. And then the problem for black is they lose the b6 pawn, and their pawn structure is just terrible here. Yeah, this is very good. Okay. I think I've seen this example. I think it's knight takes g6, king takes, knight d6 check. King goes to, like, the king can't go to h5. I think he has to go to, like, f6 or something. I feel like there was... I've seen something like this. I think you have to start with this anyways. You could start with knight g5 check, I guess, but then after pawn takes, knight takes... That also looks very good, I will say. Knight g5, pawn takes, knight takes. We hit the queen, the rook, a bunch of discovered checks. Queen moves, I take on f8. That's winning for sure, right? That looks definitely winning. I think he took the pawn in the game. I feel like Botvinnik took the pawn in the game, is what I'm remembering. But I think knight g5 is just as good, as far as I can tell. Because after pawn takes, knight takes, there's just too many threats. But I think he took the pawn. King takes. Knight g3 check, he has king f7. So we kind of have to cover the f7 square, I think. Knight g5 check. Sorry. King f6? It looks iffy, but I don't see the mate. Knight h7, king f7, bishop h5, king moves, take, knight takes. I think he's surviving. Yeah, I think knight g5 is what I play in a game. I think he took on g6, as I said. Oh, now that I'm looking at it, bishop h5. This is the move. And then knight g3 check. And we get mate in a few moves here. Okay. So knight takes g6 is winning. Okay, knight g5 check I think is simpler in my opinion, but knight takes g6 does, it looks like, you know, lead to checkmate. This bishop h5 move is very important, I think, though. I would venture to guess if you don't play bishop h5, you might actually have some trouble attacking. Yeah, like knight d6 is still +2, but that's not that giant of a number. Bishop h5 is very important in that position. Yeah, both look good. I think in a game I'd play knight g5 check, take on g6, then take the rook is what I would probably do. If I'm being, like, you know, if I'm being truthful about it, you could say. Okay, if I take on e2, I lose the knight on b6. I think that's white's idea. If I take a3, rook takes. Okay, so the knight hanging on on b3, or sorry, b6 is kind of annoying. So do we just, like, play rook b8 maybe? Maybe just a rook b8 type of move? I don't think so. That doesn't feel correct. That doesn't feel correct at all. This is almost a trapped queen. Like, if we take the bishop and then play rook to b8, it's almost trapped, but he does have the f6 and a7 squares. So I don't think that that works the way we'd want it to. Oh, hold on. I think I've got it. So I think we take on a3 first. I think. Hold on. Maybe it is e2 first. What I'm thinking is, though, that if we take e2, they take b6, we take f3, or a3, rook takes, then rook to b8, and then wherever the queen goes, then we have queen f1, followed by, like, rook b1, rook c2, or rook c1, rook b2 ideas. Now the question is, which of these moves do we play first? That's the question. If we take the bishop, they don't have to take b6. They could play bishop takes a3 first, and then that rook stays on the back rank, which is kind of annoying. So maybe it is bishop takes a3 first. I think I have to take the bishop in order to guarantee that the rook will leave the back rank eventually. I think that's the important point. So we take there, then we take here, then rook b8, then queen f1, and then here I don't think it matters which rook we check with. I think you could also go rook c1 and rook b2. I think that also works. Okay, very nice. Yeah, that's a very nice calculation sequence. Yeah, and you have to make sure you get the move order correct here. It looks like if you take on e2, bishop takes f8, and then it says this is equal. So, yeah, this is a very nice calculation exercise. This is, I mean, I'm curious to see what the advanced puzzles are looking like, because I will say, I don't know how much this is training pattern recognition when you're having to really work through, like, a 5-move sequence. There is a pattern within here. The pattern I would say that's good to know is the queen takes f1, then the rook c1, rook b2. Like, you know, the sacrificing on f1 to get the checkmate, I think, is the important pattern to be aware of. But the moves before it kind of don't fit in my mind. They don't fit into pattern recognition type of puzzles. So as I'm going through this course, I'm trying to also kind of formulate a bit of a review that I would have afterwards. So that's maybe just, you know, part of what I'm considering here. Okay, I feel like I've seen this one before, maybe. I'm pretty sure it's like some bishop e6, knight takes, queen takes, king h8. I think you check on h3 again, king g8, and then it's some kind of rook takes f6. And then I think white is winning there. I'm pretty sure this is it. Now, I don't remember if it matters if you take the knight first or check first. It may not matter here. I'm going to check first, and then take, and then check. And then bishop a3 is, I think, a very important move. You want the rook to block on d6. If the bishop blocks, queen h8 is mate, so the rook blocks on d6. It might also be the case that rook e1 cutting off the king is the way to go. Rook e1 also looks very, very good, because there's really... I don't see a great way to stop queen h8. That might be even better, actually. Or you can check and then play rook e1. Again, it may not matter here. I'm going to go rook e1 first. But I do think bishop a3 check would work too. I'm kind of curious. No, not bishop a3. Interesting. Oh, bishop a3, there's king e8. Bishop a3, king e8. That is the defense. So you want to play rook e1 to prevent king e8. Okay. So I kind of... I won't say I guessed it right, but I kind of got fortunate that I picked the right one. Okay, bishop a3, king e8, so that's why rook e1's better. Okay, good to know. I think this is some kind of rook f2, because if the rook takes back, you get c1, and if the king takes, probably some mate, like, oh, bishop d4 doesn't work. Queen d2, bishop blocks, bishop d4, and then I think white's having to give the queen up. Okay, if he does it this way, that works. If the king takes, queen d2, and then bishop d4 check is winning. Okay. I think this is queen takes g2, rook e2, and it's very important that the bishop on c6 is defended, because if he takes the bishop, we can take back. Right now, the queen is pinned, so that's why we're up a rook. Rook takes, queen d5 check, queen blocks, rook e8 is mate. If king h8, I take on c4 and I'm up a piece. If king takes, I think I have queen b8 with back rank mate. And yeah, we're just up a piece. Okay, we just hit 500. This was exercise number 500 here. What time are we looking at? I did have a call with somebody else, but I think that's at 2 o'clock. We might have... I don't want to stream until the call, let's put it that way. We might have maybe an extra half hour here or something like that. Okay, I think we'll do that then. Let's keep going. I am going to... Let's see, we're on 500? We're probably not going to make it to 550. Okay, let's see how far we can go, though. Alright, I think I've seen this one. Rook g2, queen takes, queen h5 is mate. And if the queen moves anywhere else, then there's other tactics. Like here, you want to take the pawn, and then check and take the rook. And then black is up, black's ahead 2 pawns. Okay. This is kind of an annoying situation, but I think we can take on d4 and then play rook c2 or something like that, maybe? I think that's what we do. And then I think we can just go to b3 or... that's not true. He would trade the rooks and then take e7. We would be down a piece. So actually, let's be a bit careful. Looks like we can take the bishop, take the pawn, move our bishop, and the dark squares are super weak. I think black has really good compensation. But let's check if there's anything else. Oh, wait, I have rook takes b2. Rook takes b2 pins the bishop here. And then we're just up 1, 2, 3, 6, 3. We're up a pawn. And white's pawn structure is terrible. Okay, I think this is rook h2, rook h8, knight blocks, rook takes, king g3, rook takes g5. Yeah, if he blocks with the bishop, we take the queen. If he blocks with the knight, we take the knight. And then after king g3, we take the bishop. Knight e4 check, knight takes, stops that. But we can take with the queen and then knight e4 check because the pawn's pinned, and then take the queen and we're up a piece. And yeah, king moves, we take the queen and we're up a piece. This rook is running low on squares. Maybe some kind of knight f5 or knight c8? There's also just like rook h3, but black, I guess, pushes the f pawn to guard the h pawn is, I think, their idea. Oh, wait, can we go knight f5, pawn takes, rook check, if knight blocks, queen f6 mates. If king h8, queen f6 mates. So knight f5, they can't take the rook, or they can't take the knight, sorry. The king moves, and maybe we still play queen f6. And knight h6 is a big threat. I think it's knight f5, and then I think we go queen f6 to set up the mate threat. Okay, apparently there's another move that works. Maybe now rook h3, but then they still move the f pawn to f6. Hold on. Maybe I check on h6 first. Checking on h6 first looks good. Check. Check. And then we can take the pawn on f7 afterwards and then go back to h6, and white's completely winning here for sure. Okay. We're apparently looking at Vasily Smyslov. Probably one of the more underappreciated world champions, in my opinion. You don't really hear as much about him compared to the other guys. But I think he was supposed to be like very, very strong at in-games, I think, specifically. Let's see here. I'm looking at ideas of like moving this knight and then some kind of rook d2, queen f2, queen f4 type of thing. So maybe knight c5. Knight c5, rook takes. I take d2, then f2, then c5, and I think I've won a pawn there. And white's king is super weak. Yeah, I think so. I think knight c5. Now the question is, does white doesn't have to take the knight? They could move the queen away. But then that's a little bit tricky. If they don't take the knight, then what are we doing? Maybe we still do rook takes d2, maybe? If the queen takes, knight to b3? I feel like if we eliminate the dark square bishop, I think white's entire position falls apart. Now, I will say, the other move is knight takes e5, and this is actually probably just, now that I'm looking at it, this is just simpler. Because pawn takes, I take here and get the rook. I think knight takes e5 is just better because of this pin, or this f4 pawn is pinned and then forked, and the fork on e4. This might just be more straightforward, I think. Okay, so knight c5 is maybe not a bad move, but knight e5 is, yeah, knight e5 is picking up a pawn pretty quickly. Alright, our queen is hit. Bishop takes, they have to take with the queen. Keep this protected. f7 check. Rook takes f7, queen d8 check, and then bishop takes d5 looks quite dangerous for black. I think that looks pretty good. I think that's the way to go. They do have knight f2 check, but after king g2, we have queen h4. We have queen h4 coming back to take the knight, or delivering mate. Here we can just trade the queens. Now here it's a little bit tricky. If we take the knight, they take here with check and take the bishop, and we're not actually ahead. So maybe we just play bishop e6 and... hold on. We could also just take the b7 pawn, I think. And then if they take f5, rook f1 pins the knight. That might be better. There might also be a way to trap the knight, but it does have a couple of escape squares. I don't really see a way to cover both of those. I think we take the b pawn. No, not that. Interesting. Maybe just bishop e6 and like walk the king up the board. We are up a pawn. I guess we are ahead one pawn. So maybe that's no, not that. Do we take the knight and once we take the knight, we're not up a pawn anymore. That's what I don't like about that. We have bishop f3. We have bishop f3. I thought he had knight to d3. Maybe then we take b7. Is that the idea? No, not that either. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. What do we do here? I thought bishop f3, knight d3, then take b7 would work, but okay. Something better still available? Rook takes f5 right now is a legitimate threat because we don't have bishop e4. We need to pretty much move the bishop. Oh, we can block with the bishop. I'm so that's very dumb. That's very dumb of me. Yeah. That's very silly. I don't know how I just missed that we can block with the bishop. Okay, that was very, very silly. I don't know what else to say about that one. I think we check here, and then if they block with the queen, we pin. And I guess they have queen d7. But then we take a5. 1, 2, 3. Somehow we're down a piece. And I mean, we can take on d5 and then just take back on b3 or something, but it doesn't feel convincing. Queen a4 check. Queen c6. Queen takes a5. Bishop takes g2. Oh, sorry. Queen a4 check, queen c6, we pin. That's right. So it's got to be queen a4 check. And then here, sorry. I mentioned this move earlier. I think now, though, we have bishop f7. And then trade the queens and then take the bishop. Okay. Sorry, 3 straight hours of calculating puzzles is quite a bit. I'm starting to get a little sloppier. Okay, let's keep going, though. I think we have knight f6. If the queen takes, we trade and win the rook. If the rook takes on d1, we have knight to d5 and we win the queen. Okay, here we should be able to just trade the rooks and move the knight to safety. Oh, we can take a pawn. Okay. That's even better. Rook takes, check here. Rook c8 check. We're already up the exchange, so we don't necessarily have to do anything drastic here. Queen g1, king c2. Rook takes d5 first. Let's see. Rook takes check there. Check on c8. King d3. Queen b1 check. King c2. Rook c2. Or king e2, rook c2. Knight blocks. Or queen check, knight blocks. Our own king is a little exposed, but I think rook takes d5 is the move. And then we check here. And then I think we check on c8. I think. c1 would be nice, but the knight covers that. So I think it's c8. And then I think it's b1 is what I was thinking. And then b2. And it says white will soon have to give up his queen to avoid the mate. Okay. I think I've seen something like this before. Mikhail Tal. Great player. I think it's rook takes a6, pawn takes, queen b6, take a6, take c8 as mate. And if the king takes on a6, you have a bunch of different mates. Okay, that's it. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop c5 pins the queen. Free pawn, I think. Rook f2, and then queen h3 is tough to stop, or queen g2. I guess there is the move rook b8, bishop blocks, and then rook takes. That doesn't feel ideal, because then my own rook on f2 is pinned. So maybe I check on h3 and then play rook f3, and I try to come over for checkmate. There's also check here and then d2. That's probably better. It's messy, though. It's still kind of messy. Is it maybe... It can't be d2 right away, because we lose our queen. It could be queen f3 and then d2, but I think it's queen h3. I think it's d2 here. I think. d2, there is knight takes g6, and then rook h4. But then after king g8, I'm still threatening to take there. So I think it's d2. I take this. Okay, here I trade the queens, I assume. Also don't have to trade the queens. Can play king g8 and then make a queen. Okay, hold on, let's figure this out. If I trade, move, rook d5 to stop the pawn, and then I don't have a great way to promote it. I think I go king g8. Even if I lose my queen, I stay on the attack, which is kind of the important point, and then I'll check on c2 and win the rook. Yeah, so important to not take the queen, even though my queen is hanging. If I do trade, white does defend here, and instead, if the queen takes on h3, I'm going to eventually win the queen or give checkmate. Okay, very good. I think I've seen this one. Rook takes f7, queen c4 check, rook blocks knight g5, or if king e7 or f6, bishop check, and if king h4, I think knight h4, or king g6, I think knight h4 eventually leads to mate. I think it's this. Now is the question b3 or c4? That's an important question. I think it's c4 because you kind of want to stay over on this side of the board, I think. Yeah, so it is c4. It says knight g5 check is also winning. It also says queen b3 check is winning. Pretty much all of these moves are winning. Queen h4 is not winning. I'm not sure why this is in here, because they would just trade the queens. But it says knight g5 is also winning, and okay, a couple different ways to get the job done. Knight takes, queen takes, check here, check. Here, check wins the queen. I think it's this. Check, 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 and we win the queen. Alright, knight d5, pawn takes, rook a6. And then queen c8 is what I'm looking at. Could also take on a6 and then knight d5. But then there's rook a7, I think. But if knight d5... Hold on. Knight takes b5 is also the same idea, I will say. Pawn takes, then a rook a6. Or rook a6, then knight b5. And then this check is... Now that check is very hard to stop, because there's no rook a7 anymore. I think it's that one. There we go. How to choose your move. How to choose move when you're in time trouble. When you're in time trouble, you're mostly playing on intuition at that point. Hopefully your intuition has been built up over time so that it's pretty solid. Otherwise, if you're in like severe time trouble, you're probably just having to play very quick moves and try to check your opponent, make them lose, time on the clock, make a threat that they have to react to. Those are kind of, let's say, like blitz tips. If we're talking about like just being a little bit low on time and, let's say not having any extra, if you're having like extra time added to the clock every move, it's a whole different matter. But for the most part, it's pretty hard to calculate in time trouble. Your rapid is 1600, but bullet's 1200. I think that's pretty normal. I mean, most players' bullet ratings is lower than their blitz or rapid ratings because it's just much harder to play with short time. Quite honestly, I wouldn't really be concerned about that. If I was in your shoes, again, I don't really know what your goals with chess are, but I would generally recommend just focusing on rapid and longer time control games would be my general advice. I think this is rook c4, knight e3, bishop takes e3 check, queen f3 leads to mate. Now, do we start with knight e3? I don't think so, because our bishop is lost. So we do it this way. If they don't take the knight, we're threatening the queen and g2 checkmate. Yep, you're welcome, Hang. It's not exactly the best advice, or let's say, it's not the most helpful advice in the world, I'm just saying get better. But that is like, you're relying on intuition when you're in time trouble, so if the better your intuition is, the better your moves will be. Okay, I think it's bishop f2, knight e4, and then we win the rook. Feels like some kind of a6, c6, b6 thing. I'm not sure which one, though. Probably c6, pawn takes b6, and then it's hard to stop the A and B pawns. Yeah, no way to stop both of those. Okay, what to do? I think you can take here, and if the rook takes, you have rook takes b7, and you pick up a pawn. Yeah, you pick up a pawn. This feels like knight c5, pawn takes, rook takes, pin the queen. I wonder if the other move order works, though. Pawn takes, maybe rook a8, and then rook takes d7, but I know this is the way to go. I think rook takes d7 is probably better. No. Must be rook a8 first, then. No. Must be bishop f4. Okay, yes. I'm curious if other moves work. It says rook a8 question mark. Take here. And white can't defend both the king and the bishop, but he can give the bishop up and make a draw. Okay, I did cut my calculation short here. I kind of just assumed we were going to be in good shape, but it does actually end up that white's in a bit of a trouble. The rook d1 threat is pretty big. There is queen f3, though, so I'm not entirely sure why he says white can't defend both the king and the bishop. I mean, queen f3 defends, right? Am I crazy? I feel like queen f3 defends. Okay, black is not much worse off, though, that's for sure. Okay, fair enough. Feels like it should be knight b5. We get both of these pawns, and we will just have a super strong knight. Knight f5 also looks very good. Knight f5 is probably better, because we guarantee the win of the pawn, and we try to open up the king if they take, so that looks even better. And that's just game over. Okay, it's amazing to see... Hold on, let me hit next variation. It's amazing to see how fast you take in the position. Is it purely experience? Or do you have some system for building that up? So, I mean, it is experience, for sure, but it's experience using the system. or using a, like, let's say, thought process system. The way that I've explained it to students in lessons is, like, let's say you're learning to drive a car. Let's say you're learning to drive a car, right? When you're first learning to drive a car, there's a bunch of different things you have to do to drive a car. There's a lot of things you don't think about when you're used to driving a car that you actually need to do when you're driving a car. You have to, shift into drive or reverse. You have to, look in the rearview mirror, look at the side mirrors, twist the wheel, look to the right, look to the left. You have to make sure there's no other cars on the road driving around you. You don't want to drive into somebody. Once you've done enough driving over, years and years of time, then it just becomes second nature, and, then it becomes a case where you have to be careful you're not distracted and so used to driving that you start texting on the phone and stuff like that. But um, so yeah, so first of all, the experience just or the call it pattern recognition or the experience just comes with time. But in the first place, what I would say to build that up to begin with, let's say like the system for building that up that you kind of were referring to, what I would say in that regard is when you're first looking at any position in chess, and I actually have a video on my channel, on my YouTube channel about this, but I recommend like a four-step thinking process. When you're first looking at any position in chess, whether it's a tactic puzzle or a game you're playing or any random position you come across, you first want to identify, number one, what's the opponent's... oh, you did watch that video. Okay. Yeah, so if you've seen the video, then you kind of understand what I'm probably about to say then. So, and the way... So once you're kind of implementing that thinking process, the best way to get experience with that is to do puzzles. I think I probably mentioned that in the video as well. But when you're solving puzzles, you can practice all of the steps of that thinking process. Even if you already know there's a tactic in the position, you just get to practice the thinking process. Why did my opponent make their most recent move? What forcing moves do I have? You can even think, like, assuming you don't have any good forcing moves, even though you know it's a puzzle, you could think, like, what are some strategic-looking things I might think about in the position? It really just comes down to the more and more and more that you ask yourself those questions and think through the positions that way, the more it becomes second nature. And the more second nature it is, the faster you get with it. So, for instance here, I can look at this position and I can say, okay, my queen is hit, this is undefended, this is undefended, the king is lied by the rook, my rook is being attacked at the same time. I can kind of pick up on all of these things pretty quickly. And then I start to look for my own checks and captures and my own forcing moves. Like, you know, I'm looking at this to capture, but then I lose the rook. I'm looking at this capture, which is actually what I'm leaning towards in this position. I'm looking at, you know, taking the rook, but then I lose the queen. I'm pretty sure this one is rook takes e6. If the pawn takes, queen takes g7 is checkmate. If the king takes, we throw in a check somewhere and then take the rook, and we're up the exchange. And if the king moves away, we can take on d6 a bunch of times and then take the rook on h8. So I think that rook takes e6 is this one. I don't know if it matters which of these two checks we give. Queen g4, there is f5, but then we throw in another check and eventually take the rook. Queen h3, I can take the rook after. So I don't know if it matters which one. I'm going to do g4. I think h3 would have worked as well, but okay. So yeah, the point is I'm able, you know, because of a lot of practice and experience, I'm able to, you know, to look at a position and kind of try to assess or kind of get the orientation of things, you could say, and pick up on like the undefended pieces, the stuff that's attacked, the checks that are available, the captures that are available, pretty quickly, just, you know, because I do that in like every position I look at anyways. At the end of the day. Now, that doesn't mean I'm always solving every puzzle instantly. We've seen plenty of puzzles today that I'm not solving instantly, but then there are other ones that are a little easier that we are, you know, that I'm coming up with pretty quickly. Okay, like here, for instance, there's one check that's available, but the rook takes. I don't think that I want to give up two pieces for the rook without a whole lot good for me. I don't think I want to capture the knight. Knight to e3 is the answer on this one as far as I can tell. I fork the two rooks, and if they take the knight, I take with check and I win the queen. So, for players who haven't built this up, it takes longer to go through the kind of list of like, where are all the checks, where are all the captures, where's all the threats, where are the undefended pieces, where are the kind of targets in the position. But again, the more you do it, the more you think through positions that way, the more second nature it becomes and the quicker you get with it. That's really just what it comes down to. It's just speed and practice and practice experience, and that's where the speed comes from. Like here, rook h8, king takes, queen h6, and queen g7 looks good. I have to assess king f7 though instead of taking. Maybe there we take the rook, or maybe there's something better. I can check with the knight first and then take the rook, but they can also take my knight. But, I mean, this is for sure the first move. I don't know which of these are better, to be quite honest. I have a feeling that I would take the... Well, actually, no, sorry. The rook is protected, right? So I think that's... Even here, I just kind of missed that the rook is defended. So knight g5 check, king here. Queen e7 check, take the rook, take f6 check, king g8, take here, king f8. Like, this one's not coming to me instantly here. But I do think it's knight g5. Knight c7, there is queen c4 check, which is bad news. So I think I have to keep checking. Check here. I guess then I can take the rook. Take the rook and then check and take the knight. That looks good enough. Okay, we check here. I think we take the rook. And then, yeah, after takes, we check and take the knight. I didn't pick up on the orientation bit when watching the video. I was so concerned with picking up on my opponent's ideas since that's what I was struggling with. Yeah, so the orientation part of things mostly comes, I'd say, in like the second step, in my opinion. The second step of that thinking process, where you're looking for your own forcing moves and your own tactical ideas. What I mean by that is the orientation is kind of just assessing all of the options and especially forcing move options, and then all of the kind of, you could call them like tactical targets in the position. Now, before you start looking for those things, or maybe you could kind of say like parallel to looking for those things, you have to see what your opponent's doing in the first place. I tend to start with my opponent's move in the first place because they just made a move that if it did something, you want to, be aware of what that something was. I think this is knight takes g6, I think. Pawn takes, rook h3 as mate, queen takes, you take on c4. Or you check on, no, you would take on c4, yeah. I think you do it this way. Okay, we finished this chapter. Probably I'll pause here, I guess, since we did just complete a chapter. That seems like a pretty good rounding off point. I think that meant we are through, let's see, we did 526 puzzles so far, so we did 126 puzzles today, because we started off at 400, and we're up to 526. So what this means is we have 2 more intermediate chapters of about 459, about 460 puzzles for intermediate left, and then the last 145-ish advanced puzzles to do. I don't know if you're familiar with the calculation course by Azel Schwa on Chessable. I'm definitely familiar with it, but I learned the orientation idea from there. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've heard of it. Let's put it that way. I watched like the peek inside video and the introduction and stuff like that. I don't have the course, but I have heard very good things about it. His course came out right around the same exact time. I think that was his first course on Chessable, and his course came out right around the same time my first course on Chessable came out as well. So I remember having, he probably has no knowledge of this because I've never talked to him, but I had like a, let's say, friendly competition in my own mind to see like whose course was getting more reviews and stuff. But his is done really, really well. I think he has like 500 or 600 reviews on the course, so I'm sure that he's done very well off with that course. I've heard things from students who have the course that say it's very good. But the orientation part of things is important because rather than jumping right into moves, like, oh, I see a check, I just want to look at that right away, you have to kind of assess the position to begin with. Are there, again, like undefended pieces, a checkable king? I don't know exactly what definitions or terminology he uses, but is there a king that can be checked, undefended pieces, pieces or that are attacked and defended the same number of times? I would also say for myself, like two-piece lineups, three-piece lineups, different things like that. And then you start to look for moves that aim in the direction of those weaknesses. Like if I see that a piece is undefended, I'm more likely to look at a move that aims in that direction. Or if I see something that's pinned, I'm more likely to look in the direction of that pin to see if I can attack the pin, stuff like that. Um, yeah, no, the course wouldn't be for me. Sometimes I get courses for low-rated players just to learn what the explanations are and do some research, so to speak. I'm always trying to learn how to explain things better because I do a lot of coaching. I coach young kids in schools. I coach online one-on-one lessons, so I'm always trying to figure out how to explain things to students better. So that's part of why I'll get courses meant for lower-rated players every now and then. Can I recommend any tactics books before the Woodpecker method? That's a good question. Let's look. Let's look here. So, the first, again, I'm going to say this for the general public. I don't know your specific rating, Itachi. I think that you're, from the answers you've given, I don't think this would be, applicable to you. But at least on Chessable, everyone's first chess workbook is probably the first stepping point for especially beginner-rated players. Everyone's first chess workbook is really, really good. But again, it's meant for like 1,000 and below rated players, in my opinion. After that, let me back up. Common chess patterns I've heard good things of. But in terms of specifically tactics, let me scroll down a little bit. The Checkmate Patterns Manual has a lot of good reviews. It says only 66, but I know that this is because they added video. The original one has like thousands of reviews on it. Before Woodpecker method, honestly, the Azul Schwal one that we were just talking about is probably good. Maybe this is a good one, like pre-Woodpecker method. Not this one, sorry. This one here. I don't know how easy it is to see on the screen share, but yeah, Calculation, a complete guide for tournament players. This is a good course. It's got like 500 reviews, and they're all pretty positive. So that one I think is pretty good. Oops, sorry, wrong button. What you probably want to do in the first place, though, is you want to get a good understanding of all the different tactical patterns to begin with. So in that regard, you'd want to look at a book or course that has like all the pins, all the skewers, all the forks. Maybe I've heard good things about this one, Beginner's Guide to Chess Tactics. This is going to cover all of the pin, skewer, discovered attack, checkmate, traps, magnet, etc. This is one that has maybe close to 700-ish puzzles total, or 700 examples. And so this one's got pretty good reviews. If you're going kind of past that, probably once you understand the basic gist of things, and then you have a little bit of a calculation backing with that, with maybe the Azul Schwal one, then Woodpecker method probably be good to go for there. And I will also say that I think his name's pronounced Jean, but Jean Kabadai has a great channel on YouTube as well, and he's got really good reviews on his courses. This one is Fundamental Chess Calculation Skills. I have this one. I went through a fair amount of this one, if I remember correctly. And this one does a good job at, I think every puzzle in this course is like a two-move calculation sequence. You make a move, the opponent has a response, and then you have like the finishing move, so to speak, that wins you material or gets you checkmate. So these are shorter puzzles, but you want to start off with shorter puzzles before you get to like the 5-6 move combinations that, some of the puzzles we've looked at have been a little bit lengthy. So yeah, I think those are some good ones to begin with. You can kind of pick and choose what looks best to you from the descriptions, but those are some good ones for sure. I really liked the 1001 in-game exercises for beginners, worth looking into, but that would be for pattern recognition, less about calculation. Yeah, if you're going for pattern recognition, which I think I would generally say, I don't know, I think the principle is called the Pareto principle, I think is what I've heard. I think for the most part, easier tactics are going to decide 80% of your games. That's a little bit of a generality, but easier tactics are going to decide the large majority of most players' games. maybe 20% of the time, the calculation sequence will be on the trickier or longer-winded side of things. But in like a large majority of games, the deciding factor in terms of like the tactic or calculation is going to revolve around like pattern recognition and also not making blunders yourself. There's a smaller percentage of the time that is going to be the case where, oh, I messed that up because I didn't calculate some longer sequence correctly. Most of the time, most mistakes players make are because of shorter calculation sequences and less on the longer side of things. So I would focus on pattern recognition first, or maybe not first. I'd say a majority of my tactic training would focus on pattern recognition, especially in the earlier stages of your chess improvement. And then the stronger you become as a player, the higher rated you get, then the more you want to focus on like the lengthy calculation. That's how I would, describe it. Anyways, though, it's been a real joy to chat with you guys. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for the answers. I think Thomas was in here earlier. I'm not sure if he's still here. Ernesto already left. Hang had a question earlier. Yeah, so very nice to chat with all you guys. I think I will pause it for today. I don't want to start on the next chapter. I think it's a good stopping point. We are 450 something puzzles through, I think is what we said. Oh, no, sorry, more than 450. We are 526. So we are about halfway through as far as I'm aware. I think there's 1,128 total, 526. Pretty close to halfway through the course. And so tomorrow we will continue on the next chapter, 6.2, intermediate exercises. There are about 600-ish left, I think. And we will continue with that tomorrow and see how it goes. All right. Enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a good rest of the day. I'll see you tomorrow for the stream if you're tuning in. Otherwise, I'll be back next Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time once again. And we will continue working through it. Finish up cycle 1 of the Woodpecker method. Start on cycle 2 afterwards and see how it goes. All right. Very welcome. Thomas, JC, Itachi, anybody else that's watching as well. See you guys again tomorrow. Bye-bye. You'll be there on Tuesday again. Sounds good. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.